Outlaws Corner. Today's guest is a guitarist and vocalist. He is well known for co-founding the American progressive metal band Fates Warning. He might have left after their second album, but he is far from done. He continued playing with Freedom's Reign, Entierro, Arduini Balak, and Bobby Sings the King. His latest band is called Mythosphere. In 2022, they released their debut, which is entitled Pathological. Songs such as For No Other Eye, Star-Crossed, and Walk in Darkness help reignite the flame of classic emotional metal. So without further ado, please welcome the extremely talented guitarist and vocalist, Victor Arduini. Victor, how the hell are you?
I'm great, brother. How are you?
I am doing very well. So first of all, I want to thank you for being on the show. As I was mentioning off the air, you and I have been going back and forth for several years. The first time I've seen you at the Agora in the 80s, but the first time I actually spoke with you, we're going to get into that later.
Was that the Queensrÿche show?
No,
Or was it just in the audience somewhere?
No, it was in the audio. No, I think actually it was Queensrÿche. Because did you ever play? I mean, we're gonna talk about a band that I'm friends with, Sacred Oath. I saw you guys play with them, and it was. Did you play the Agora with them?
All I remember at the Agora was Queensrÿche. They could have been on the bill with us for all I know. I don't remember. I think it was just us and Queensrÿche. But
well, I was at the Queensrÿche show.
Yeah, and the Sacred Oath. The name of the band sounds very familiar. I couldn't tell you if I remember whether I played with them or not. It's hard to remember anything of that nature. I barely remember people we warmed up with, but I just don't remember.
Oh yeah, well it's been a long time. It's been a couple of years. I can imagine.
Yeah, it's been a few.
But I first talked with you or spoke with you. You were opening up for a friend of mine's band at the Space in Cellar on Treadwell in Hamden.
Oh, yeah.
They're called, my friend's band is called Curse the Sun. I'm not sure what band it was. It might have been Entierro.
Yeah, it probably was, because Entierro pretty much plays for any band that'll have us on, and the Cellar's a pretty popular place these days. Curse the Sun, phenomenal band.
I love them, man.
I actually just got to know the guitar player within the last year. I actually think we played a gig with them before, and I never got a chance to meet them. But a big fan of their sound and the guy's vocals. That's to me is what makes that band great. Yeah. I love doom sludge stuff. I really do, but I like a good vocal with it. And when I heard him sing, I was like, wow, And so we connected a couple of times, and I think we're both going to be at the Maryland Doom Fest this June.
Oh,
so I'll be seeing him there. Ron, I think, is there, and I'll be looking forward to seeing him again.
Yeah, and he's a great guy. His name is Ronnie Vanacore. I knew him in 88, 89. I was a singer in a metal band, and his band at the time was entitled Black Witch. Great band. You would love them. Same type of music, everything. And so I've been friends with him. What was that?
Did they record anything?
They have some demos. I'm not sure if they actually, it was more back then, it was the 4 tracks and 8 tracks. I don't think they ever went into the studio and recorded anything. But their songs were great, and he and I played. Remember the Brick and Wood, New Haven? We played there a couple times. Yeah. So. And then it's funny because I didn't see him for the longest time, and then do you know Opus? Chris Lawrence is. He's a drummer for.
I know.
Okay, so his band, I played with their band too when he was in a band called Sapphire. But Ronnie, they formed a Black Sabbath tribute band entitled Earth. And he was the singer for the longest time for Earth, and now they have a new singer because he started Curse the Sun. So the local metal scene or local music scene is so small, and I'm friends with a lot of the people. So you and I probably have ran the same circles, and I didn't even realize it.
Probably, although I don't run much these days. I go out occasionally for shows, but I'm more of a homebody these days. And it's funny because when I'm on the stage, I love cranking it up and playing. But when I go to a show, I don't find myself as interested as I've gotten older to sit there and listen to a night of metal. It has to be something I really want to see. Now, Curse the Sun, if I went and saw them, I'd be right up front. That's a band that I know what I'm going to get. And that's the kind of show I like to go see these days.
And one last thing about him. Have you seen his son's band? I think they might. His son is, I want to say 14 years. I can't remember the name of the band. His son, I think it's 13 or 14 years old. He's a phenomenal drummer. He sings and plays drums. And he plays old metal such as Venom, Slayer, Old Slayer. He is really good. He's opened up for his father's band several times at the Cellar, and on
Oh
treadmill.
wow, I'd have to ask him about that, or because I didn't even know his son played like that. That's the first I'm hearing of this. So
Oh yeah, you would like them. I saw them several times. So yeah, they're a very talented family and very down to earth, nice, genuine people.
yeah,
Yep. All right, I want to talk about your band though. The one that your latest, I was talking about that in the intro. It's pronounced Mythosphere. Let's talk
you
about
got it.
that. Yeah.
Well, Mythosphere is a band built upon various members of other bands. Dana Ort is primarily the leader of this band. And the way this all started was years ago. I was out of metal for a long time. When I got married, went to school, I really wasn't listening to metal for about 5, 6 years easily. Nothing. And then I started getting back into it after talking to for While Heaven Wept. What's his name? The guitar player in drawing a blank right now.
Yeah, I can't think of it
But
either.
he started getting me into all these great metal bands. Oh, you'd be great with this one. This was when I was just starting Freedom's Reign. And so, make a story short, he started naming off some bands, and one of them was a band called Beelzebub.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of Beelzebub?
I heard of them. I've heard that name. I don't think I've heard any music from them, but I'm going to check it out after this
God,
interview.
you gotta check them out. That's what got me into Dana. Very rarely do I hear music that just wakes me up, inspires me, feels like something I would love to be a part of. I kind of goes with the style, like maybe. And so I fell in love with that band big time and played the hell out of them. Got to meet Dana at one of the Doom Fest about maybe 7 years ago. Said hi, fans of each other, one of those, hey, I'd love to work with you someday. And, that was fantastic. Didn't hear from him for a few years until he said, hey, I'm putting together a new band. And I wonder if you'd like to do some soloing on it. It was like an instant yes. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm a big fan of this guy. And I let him know that. I go, he writes some of the most intricate things as a guitarist. He goes places on the neck and he has fingerings that I never would think of, and I can't even play some of them. I'm like, I come up with my own stuff because I can't copy everything he does, which is weird. But he has such a unique voice. His voice, the first time I heard a song from Fuzz, I swear to God, I thought it was a female singer, in a good way. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't have liked him if I didn't like the voice. And it reminded me of Grace Slick singing "Somebody to Love."
Love that.
That voice, that high range, don't you want? And that's his voice in a way. But now that I know him and I figured out things, I couldn't even imagine that being a woman. It sounds like a guy to me. But we're a little story. But the fact is, he got back to me. He said, "Would you like to do something?" Love the idea. And next thing you know, it became a project through the internet.
Hmm.
Never once went down for a rehearsal. He writes all the music. He writes all the songs, basically rehearses everything with the drummer. And when they do that together, they just work demos, and this and that. And as they're doing the demos, they start sending me stuff. It's that kind of working relationship. But no, never got together with them. Never done that before. Well, maybe I have, and I shouldn't say that. But in this regard, as far as joining a band, and so I just worked on stuff, and I remember they sent me the first one, and it blew me away. It's called King's Call. I remember. So I went and did all these arrangements over the demo at my house. They weren't expecting that.
No.
And it was just something I heard. And I sent them back with all these layers. It's like they call it the candy on top with stuff.
Mhm.
I take what they did, and that's what I kind of do with all our songs. I just create my own little soundscape over everything, and they loved it. So right then and there, we knew we had a match, because I was like, well, I definitely, if I were the writer and I sent somebody that song and they sent me back all this crap all over it, I mean, either got to be good and it's got to be up my alley, and I totally dig it on first listen, or I'm probably like, oh my God, what's he doing? I didn't want him to do any of this. So you don't know. And I've had this happen, and I sent it to them, and they liked it. And so I kept doing them. Like every other day, I was doing another one, had all these demos. So that basically became the first record. A lot of what I wrote, I put on the album. And now we're in the process of recording our second.
All right.
I'm about 5 songs into it now, complete all my parts. I got another 5 to still go. So definitely in the middle of all this, but all the other tracks, the guitar tracks and the drums are done. Bass will get added, and I don't know what Dana's plan is to put this out, but based on timescapes of stuff, I'd be surprised it's not till the fall. It just takes time to do all this, and the earliest. So whatever. But I'm back when I'm in this recording mode and I'm up in my little studio you're seeing me in now.
Mhm.
Um, it's my happy place, And when I have a project on my computer that I can pull up every night and create sounds and create stuff, it is such a blast. So I'm in that mode right now.
I love it. Well,
I'm in my
hopefully,
happy place. I can't wait for you to hear this new music too.
yeah.
It's really
Well, I loved Pathological. That was such a great album, and I'm definitely looking forward to the new
thank
thing.
you. Thank
Do you
you.
find I know a lot of bands do this now because especially with some bands, one lives in LA, the other one lives in Connecticut, another one lives in San Diego, so they can't really get
Yeah,
together. Is it harder because like when you have all in one room, the band's together, you start playing guitar riff. I know you said Dana writes all the music for the and then
yeah,
you add the layers to it and make it your
yeah,
own. But does it sort of like? Because I mean, like when you're in a band room with the whole full band playing, and drummer's like, well, let's try this. And then the bass
yeah.
player like, let me. Does that sort of change the dynamic and make it a little bit harder to create music?
Not harder to create music because I love actually. My favorite thing to do is to layer and to do stuff.
Yeah.
And he writes such great music. I know what you're saying. When you're in a room with a band, if you will, everybody's ideas. Hey, try doing this. I love what this guy does. I haven't questioned one song he ever did in Beelzebub. They're
No.
all epics to me. And I'm like, let this guy go for it. Like it's like kind of my Arduini Balik. It's his band in a way, and he's writing everything. Let him write the way he is. I'm not going to question anything. I really have that attitude as I don't question anything, and I like everything. And then I just get to do what I get to do without having to write the song. But I think what I play adds a whole nother layer. If you heard the version without me, it's great. It's just simpler. It's just a very simple track. And I'm not saying simple because Dana's an amazing guitarist, but it just doesn't have all that fill in stuff, solos and harmonies and sounds going on. And that's what I love to do. So it's like a perfect match for me now. Now,
Yeah.
back in my younger days, I like to be in a room with the band. Matter of fact, Arduini Balik would have never gotten written if I didn't have a drummer to jam with. That kind of music, which is more proggy and off the cuff riffing, I do that with a drummer just when they're jamming. We just kind of make up shit and I'm taping everything. And you go home, you got some good ideas and can't think of that stuff just sitting in my room. It's not the same.
I, no, definitely.
So so this is working perfect for me, and I think this is the way I'd like to go further in my recording career.
Oh no, it's perfect because as you said, you're in your happy room. You can just do what you want. You can record it when you're ready to do it, and you don't have to be like, all right, well, I'll be at the band spot at 6 o'clock. Away, I'm running late from work. I can't make it. So this is definitely perfect for you. And you know what else? I didn't mean to interrupt you when you were talking. I was thinking about this because you mentioned several bands, and I love that each one band's prog rock, another one could be a little bit more grungy, like Sabbathy type, and so I love the fact you have different bands with different genres of music, and they're all great.
Well, thank you. It's funny because I recognize every band I play in has a different sound, different style. I don't want to keep playing in bands that are all the same. It'd be why do that? What's the
Hmm.
point of having four bands if they're all the same style band? So I dig that. I mean, Dana's music is in the vein of my Arduini Balik album. And that album, to me, out of everything I've done in my life, is my favorite simply because it's 100% what I feel. I wrote the riffs, I wrote everything, played the bass, did all that stuff. It was a total labor of love making that. And that people ask me, what do you like as a guitarist? That album is 100% me. I listen to it and I'm like, and what you hear on that, those sounds and the styles, you'll hear a lot of that in Dana's band because his music is in that vein to some degree. And so he allows me to do the stuff I wanted to keep doing with Arduini Balik, but couldn't. And that's kind of the way I go. But Entierro, we're just a great old old school metal band.
Hmm.
in the vein of Priest, Metallica, and I love what we write. I still get to write some riffs and stuff in that, and again put my stuff over it. But they're a great bunch of guys, and that's another reason I play with them. It's partially the music and just the camaraderie and getting together once a week, and being in a democratic band where you might get voted out once in a while and it sucks, but you know what? I dig it. I'm like, all right, you know what? All three of you think that part sounds good that way. I'm gonna go with it. So yeah, every band I've done has been something. Freedom's Reign, I'm not even sure what that was. That was my attempt to get back into metal, and I just started playing riffs that I liked, I was feeling at the time. And those riffs probably go better with Entierro. I would say Freedom's Reign and Entierro are very similar in some way. But Freedom's Reign, I was playing so much that it started developing into crazier stuff, which became Arduini Valak. And that was some of those ideas, a couple of them might have been ideas for that. And we were actually jamming some of the stuff as a three-piece, the bassist, drummer, and me. And then I started recording drums in the studio, and I ended up putting all the bass down. And it's no disrespect to my good friend Mike. It was just I was feeling everything, and I knew what I wanted to hear. And that's why it became a solo thing. And but that drummer I played with, it was basically jamming, getting ready for ideas for our next Freedom's Reign. But it wasn't going to be a Freedom's Reign record. The music you can see they have no connection. Yeah. And that's what I like, and that's where I want to go. So all these different bands, and I played in bands even in the '80s, and they're all a different vibe. I played bass in a band once before, for 4 years, and totally dug that vibe. So I like it. And then you got, of course, the band I never really mentioned, and everything I talk about, I never mentioned Fates Warning, but that happens to be a band I was in when I was really, really young, and I look at it that way. Am I okay to talk just going off on?
Oh no, I'm enjoying this. I'm going to follow up on some of these because we mentioned a lot of different bands, and if you don't mind, at the end, I definitely wanted to talk about Fates Warning. Because as I mentioned off the air, I have a book that's all about the band from the beginning all the way till now. Yeah, it's because I know. Well, you're obviously mentioned a lot, and they interviewed you many times in the first couple of chapters. But if you don't mind talking about that band, but I was going to wait until at the end because I love what you're doing now, but. Anything, mean, wherever you want to go with this interview, this is just, you know what? I hate interviews. I love conversations. So I'm enjoying
That's what I do. I conversate and I forget I'm in the middle of an interview saying, okay, let's not turn this into a 20-minute story about something that maybe nobody wants to hear about, But you can always do it too.
I grew up with everything you're talking about through the '80s and all the different bands, and so I am loving this. I want to talk about well, first of all, we'll go back to Mythosphere. Where did the name come from? I love that.
Dana and the boys came up with it. That was their idea. I thought it was cool. And I was like, fine with me. Again, but I just felt the name of it has it's a very mystical type of name. I didn't know what it means. And I love the way when they got the cover together, I was like, boy, it kind of fits the name. And I like the logo they had. And I'm all about that kind of weird stuff. It's very personal. But some things hit you and you look at, wow, it's like buying an album in the old days. You see a cover. Sometimes you bought the album because the cover was just cool, right? Or the name of the band was, well, and sometimes people throw stuff out and it's like, doesn't work. But Mythosphere sounded badass. It felt like it went with the style of the guitar work that I'm playing in that album. It just feels like that name fits perfectly. So
it does. And I love the name. I love the logo. And obviously, I love the music. I have a question for you regarding that because I know that bands love Bandcamp because that's where you get 100% of the money that when somebody buys something from Bandcamp. Do you also have it available on the other platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music?
You know something? I'm gonna sound stupid, but I don't know. They set most of that up. I know Cruz del Sur, the label we were affiliated with on that record, they generally will do that stuff. They will put it up on Apple, but because digital sales are what mostly people go to Bandcamp for. And we were, that was something, since it was our record, we got the digital sales, but people could buy it, the album, and it went right to Cruz del Sur. So I would think they would want to put this kind of stuff on Amazon. I can't answer that because I never went looking. It's like I'm not one of those that really wants to know.
Yeah. Well, the reason I'm asking because I messaged you last week where can I find your music? 'Cause I was looking on Spotify because that's what I have, and I couldn't find it there, and I was just surprised by that. But I understand with Bandcamp because I know several of my friends who are in bands. They're always
Yep.
promoting that the most because that's where they actually make the most money instead of making 2 or 3 cents every purchase on all the other platforms like iTunes
Well, see,
and
I'm not about the money, and that's
yeah,
something I made clear to people years ago. I go, every band I'm in, I'm losing money. It's a labor of love,
yeah,
recording costs. We pay for all our recording. We pay for a lot of stuff we do, the equipment. So what? And so to me, I would love to get it on Amazon and Spotify, and I don't care if I'm making 2 cents because what I care about is somebody bought it or somebody listened. That's all I do music for. There's nothing more exciting than the day of release.
yep,
It's you look at those 8 songs and you don't know how much time and effort and creativity went in to making what you're hearing. It doesn't just happen by showing. We're not a band that just gets together and plays it live. It's really was more of a production. So I want people to hear this stuff. Every record I've done, it's like I want you to hear it. I never made any money, and I'm not looking for it. But I like to see people with a comment that says they appreciate something you did. I become a fan of anything I write and do. I really almost feel like I'm outside of it sometimes when I listen and I just dig what's going on, and I wouldn't be doing a song or a band if I didn't like it. But I hope other people hear it that way.
yep.
I hope other people hear the little things that my mind was thinking about as I was layering stuff. And
Mhm.
when I hear a comment and I can tell the comment means they actually listened, like we had some reviews that were totally deep reviews, like somebody really listened to the song and was
Mhm.
pointing out shit like, yeah, this guy got it.
Yeah.
I let that guy know. I thanked him just for that reason. But that's why we do it, man. It ain't about the 2 cents. It's
Yeah.
about so I'm gonna check that now that you mentioned it afterwards.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a good point because I always had this argument going back to the Napster days. I don't blame the big bands for getting mad because they're losing money, but the smaller bands, it gives them the exposure because somebody would like for me, I would be like, oh wow, I would never even thought of this band. Let me check it out. And then what I would do was after I liked it, I'd say, you know what, next time they're in town, I want to go see them in concert. I'm going to buy a
Exactly.
T-shirt from them. So for the smaller bands, I thought things like that and streaming is very good because you said it's all about the exposure, and obviously most bands make their money now playing live shows, selling
Yep.
merchandise. So
I'm
and I
gonna.
love your attitude because some people just want to be the rock star. You're in
Uh,
it for the music. You're in it for how it makes people feel and how it makes you feel, and that's what it should be about. It shouldn't be about like, well, I want to be famous, and that's why these
yeah.
so we can get into these shows like
I
The
don't.
Voice
I
and
don't even think back in the face warning days. I mean, we were all excited to get when we got signed. I mean, you saw the scene going on. If you think about the scene, '83 best metal years ever, and it was fun, but the word famous and all that, we might have at that point, just because we were young kids, it was like, wow, we're actually in a magazine. It blew our minds. Now it's like there's just so much of it out there. Anybody can put something out. It doesn't mean as much, maybe not to me, but when I see a good interview or a good review, that does still mean something to me. But you know what? It just doesn't matter anymore. Some of the things, find your purpose and enjoy life and enjoy your music and hopefully somebody digs it.
yeah. Well, no, exactly. And it's obviously as you get older, your priorities change. But there is something that's fine. There's a story in the book about Fate's Warning. The first time you heard one of your songs on WNHU and everybody
Oh yeah,
gathered around the radio, you're all excited. I know that feeling so well. And
yep,
like you said, now it's completely different because everybody has something either on YouTube, all the streaming services, and
yep,
so you
yep,
you were in metal at a great time. I mean, you were mentioning some of the bands, and I was thinking of when you were saying this. Merciful Fate was a great band back then. All these '80s bands.
Trouble,
Trouble, yes, I saw them at the Agora open up for King Diamond.
Metallica was.
Yep.
If there was a thing where everybody was putting out their first record, their second, and their third. And when Faith put out Brock and Kill 'Em All was coming out, when we put out Spectre, I think Ride the Lightning was just out a little bit,
Yeah.
and basic, and same thing with Slayer and Trouble and all these bands and Merciful Fate, Melissa and Don't Break the Oath, very influential on Spectre Within, both records. And a lot of bands were in that period, all coming out with their first, second Queensryche. And it was just a great thing to be a part of that. You're not somebody who was coming in 5 years later who wants to play like Slayer or wants to be like King Diamond. It was like we were just, all these bands were just a bunch of kids. We were all the same age and just writing. And I was going to say earlier, but I'm going to say now, when we did that first record, we didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Yeah.
I've never wrote a song in my life. Before then. Nothing but dumb little riffs. And I don't think Jim really wrote anything either. And it was kind of, Jim said, I want to start doing originals. And we're like, okay. It was just, we were so young, you don't care. And Jim comes down with one, and I think he came down with two, and then I came down with one. And it was just like, it worked. I don't know why. Because we just wrote riffs, and obviously that first album is a pretty simple album compared to others. But still, you have to be a riff person to write that kind of music. And we just did it. And Jim, phenomenal guitar player. So he came out with he would inspire me a lot. Every time he came up with a new style, I pick off of that, and then I grow from it in my own way, And by Spectre, we really were working off each other. I know I was working a lot off him.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about Fates Warning, let's get into that, because we'll go back to the other bands, because I want to talk about Entierro, I want to talk about Arduini and Balak, and even I want to talk about the Elvis Presley band that you're a part of. But so first, with Fates Warning, I want to get back to it, because I actually, and it's funny, I interviewed Rob Thorne, who was the lead singer / guitar player for Sacred Oath, and we were talking about influential albums and what got him into music, and he goes, we mentioned Fates Warning, and I was going to say Awaken the Garden. He goes, no, Spectre Within. I said, you are right. I love Spectre Within. This is probably my all-time favorite Fates Warning album. And I love Night in Brocken. I know what you're saying. You're brand new to it. You don't really know what you're doing, but some great rock and roll. I mean, like Buried Alive, Damnation, all these great songs on there. It's just great rock and roll. And I can even say that about Queensryche. I love the Queen of the Reich EP. There's just the Queen of the Reich, Lady Wore Black. It's just something about that, just great rock and roll. And, I will always love that album. I was listening to it the last couple of months, getting ready for this interview, or last couple of weeks, and it's just as good now as it was when I first heard it in the late 80s, middle to late 80s.
Talking about?
What was that?
Which one are you talking about?
Well, I was talking about Spectre Within first, but I actually love Night in Brocken. I love those two. So Night in Brocken is the more rock and roll album, and then I think where you started to find your voice more and started to go more in the progressive side with Spectre, and then obviously with Awaken it went even further. But those first two albums are my favorite Fates Warning album. And it was funny when I was interviewing Rob Thorne. That's exactly what he said. He goes, "No, Spectre was my biggest influence." That's when I said Fates Warning is great, and I said, you know what, me too. And actually, for the interview, and we put this on YouTube, I'm going to find a picture. I have me 17 years old with a Spectre Within shirt. I'm going to have it on.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
I got to find it. But so we'll go back to the beginning, because back, I don't know what year it was, but you and Mike Jones, bassist, which I think you're playing with now.
I'm not playing with him now. I'm not sure if he's playing these days.
Oh no, it's Freedom's Reign, right? That he played with.
That was back to Freedom's Reign days.
Oh, okay, that's what it was.
After we kind of separated for a while, I was doing the Arduini Balak. He played for a bit, and I don't think he's playing at the moment. But one of my best friends.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant. I know that Freedom's Reign was earlier, so you did reconnect with him, and you were in a band for a while, and well, so back then you placed an ad in the Hartford Advocate and said looking for a drummer to playing Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, which back then had to be Run to the Hill or Number of the Beast. I think it was 82. Oh, yeah.
Number of the Beast was just out actually, because I was in a band previously with Mike, and we were playing those songs. Another Thing Coming.
Love it.
Number of the Beast. Basically the pop metal that was starting to all come out and breaking the law. I mean, that was as good as my metal was getting at that day, as far as what I was. So we brought that to Steve. I remember going to Steve's house, and it just meeting him and the music he was playing that afternoon in his basement. I was like, who is this? He's like, oh, this is Diamond Head, the Borrowed Time album. And I was blown away by hearing something I've never heard before.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of how I felt about Basil Fuzz. Saying that there was something about Diamond Head, that Borrowed Time album. Beautiful cover, beautiful everything. So we just started doing covers, and that's all we were doing. And then we started getting into some of the newer bands. Accept was coming out.
Yeah, they had Restless and Wild was the album that came out back then.
Yeah, we're starting to do a Metallica. So we started doing some of those bands, and then Jim came aboard, and I think we started getting into some deeper tracks by band. Now we're starting to play songs like "Remember Tomorrow" by Iron Maiden,
Love that song.
"Pictured Life" by Scorpions. We're playing "Burn White Witch" by Angel Witch, and we're playing some songs by Picture. And it was like now we're getting into some deep stuff, and that's how we all love the deep stuff. And that's where the originals came from. It was like we kind of felt like we could write something ourselves. Loudness. Remember the early Devils? What's it called? The Devils.
I can't remember the name of it. I remember the what was it? Rock and Roll Crazy Nights, that first album, but I know.
I'm like that. I'm all before that. By the
Yeah,
time
yeah.
they got to that, I wasn't into loudness. But listen to Law of Devil's Land. You'll hear some Night on Brocken riffs on there. Okay, not purposely, but I know where it came from now that I hear the album. Like same thing with some Merciful Fate. All right,
Yeah.
but bottom line is we were like, we wanted to do songs like these crazy deep tracks that Jim was turning us all on to, and our local record store, we had what they called an international bin. So I go in there, I'll never forget when the guy said to me, he goes, "You got to hear this record that just came in." And he puts the needle down, and it's the beginning of "Fast as a Shark" by you want to talk about blowing your mind. And like at that moment,
Yeah.
that was the song that changed me as to what real metal was starting to become. Like the whole album blew me away. So that's how we're all getting into all these new great bands. And somehow I think our influences uh played a part in what Nine on Brocken became.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, we're all our newer influences, especially some of the newer bands. If we didn't have those albums that coming out, if Restless and Wild didn't come out, if Number of the Beast didn't come out, there wouldn't be no Faith Warning. You
Yeah.
know, we borrowed from that enough to make it our own, with definitely overtones. But I think we lost that by the time we went to Spectre. You know,
Yeah.
Spectre, we were already doing stuff that sounded like Fates Warning. That's why I like that album as a Fates Warning record.
Which one, Bracken?
No, Spectre.
Spectre. Yeah. No. So
That's the album that to me we defined the sound that it may have changed how many times, but it never really changed. Jim is a certain style writer. When I hear stuff by Jim, any Fates Warning, even his new album, which I think is fantastic.
hmm
When I listen to his style, it was there from day one when he wrote Damnation. He was just very green at that time compared to what he became. And that's why the sound of Fates has changed. You know, he's always worked to get the best sound. Where now even the albums he's written, Long Day, Good Night, and all that, don't even sound anything like Parallels and stuff. And I thought that was a major change compared to the old Fates. But they've gone through so many various changes, and through that all, there's a sound, but those influences are what brought us all together and got us writing music and starting to create the Faith Warning sound that you hear on, I would say, Spectre first. But I still hear some of that stuff, Jim's style from Spectre. I can hear it in his new writing,
Yeah.
even though he doesn't even think about that stuff. I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, well, you know what I
It's
think is a
all
little
the
bit
time.
different now. Well, according to the book, I think it's a lot different now because you wrote some songs and you and he worked together. Now, I mean, according to where I'm on page 200 in the book, and basically it's to the point where I'm just gonna go in the room, leave me alone. I'll write all the songs, and then when I'm done, I'll let you hear it. So now, I mean, I don't know if that's what it was like. Right now, what's the album after Parallel? Inside Out. They're on that album right
Inside Out.
now, where I'm
Yep.
reading that. So that right now, at that point, it's just like I want to. So in every album, according to the person that wrote the book, he was always trying to make different. He would live like No Exit was more hardcore metal, but
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
back to like the Brock, and then after that, he's like, well, I want to try something different. And then he wanted
Yeah.
to, then unfortunately, Parallels came out, and it was a horrible time where Metal Blade dropped them. Like grunge was not grunge because that was for Inside Out, but it's just it was a bad time for metal at that.
One of the biggest mistakes in metal history in my book. Faith Warning was at a point when Parallels came out. I
Yeah,
mean, they took everything they did and made that album, which
Yeah.
had it had a very nice polished sound in a good way, but great written song, great top to bottom. They had the deep tracks, they had the epics. That album should have been huge,
Yeah.
bigger than even Queen. I think Queensryche and even Dream Theater. I think it was the song, the album that could have made it, and they just came out around the time where everything fell apart,
Yeah.
and it was timing. And I've never seen something so horrible because they really worked hard to get to that level. You see the progression, and they kept gnawing at it, and then they put out Parallels, which is a masterpiece. That was one of my favorite post my era albums. Is Parallels. I
Yeah.
just love that album a lot. I also love what's the first one they had? They came back after taking a few years off. It's like a white cover with
I
this
know.
black.
Oh my God, isn't that Theories of Flight
The
or is
one
that,
before that. But that album, I one of my favorites.
yeah.
Also of that newer era, I like that one the best out of that and
Yep.
Theories, and I like all three of them. I think those three albums are some of the best they've ever done. But I just had something about that first one, that the white one. It was just
I can't remember the name of it, but I know what you're talking about. I could picture it, and I
right.
like that album too. It's just that I just finished that chapter about everything they went through with Parallels, and then just like you just said, they thought they were going like, all right, everything's going well. They were selling out every single show. They were getting bonuses for selling out the shows. They couldn't keep the merchandise in stock because people were buying it, and then everything
Yeah,
just bam fell apart. And then they were all became defeated, and then Jim was wanted to leave the band, and he told the band he was quitting. And then Frank Aresti said, "No, no, come on, calm down,
yeah,
because it's just yeah." I feel so bad because like the big three, Dream for progressives, they say, Queensryche, Dream Theater, and them. They're always, you said, they're so close, and then something happens and they go back 2 steps, and they go back 3 more steps and fall 4 steps. It's just they
yeah.
can never get to where I think they should be, but they always put out great music, and
Yeah.
I mean, Rush was obviously a big influence too for you guys.
Oh, big time.
Yeah,
Rush
yeah,
was very big for me. And I'm sure Jim. But that was a band that I was into. Well, I mean, I went and saw them on their Farewell to Kings tour. I
oh
was
wow,
lucky enough to see that tour. And I saw Hemispheres, and totally as a young guitar player, there was nothing like Rush. Those two albums are just incredible, very influential. The sounds, and I see where a lot of that came. Definitely, Jim had to be influenced because that was became a lot of where the Fate sound went for a period. I think
yeah,
you heard those overtones, but it was Jim. It's like I'm very influenced by Sabbath, and I think some of my riffing reminds me of Sabbath. It's there somewhere, but I'm also who I am. And Jim, I think he picked up on Rush a lot and some of their stuff to the point where he got a producer, Terry Brown, I think, produced the
yeah,
record, right?
yeah.
But
That's one.
which I think was something probably on his bucket list, and he did that, and that was fantastic. But you still put yourself, you become a part of it too, and I just think that era of them, their Rush era, if you will,
Yeah.
was some of their best music. Perfect Symmetry, Parallels, and the next one, even Inside Out. I think those three are very Rush influenced.
Oh, I could definitely hear it as well. You know, it's funny because back when you were in the band, one of the biggest Connecticut bands, and from what I was reading, the Fates Warning used them as a template, was Mike Vicera and Obsession.
Oh yeah.
And from what I heard, Jim was liked them so much that he actually sent Mike a tape and was trying to audition for that band for a while. But what I love is you guys progressed so quickly. You made a demo that turned into an album. And you had was it Metal Massacre 5, Soldier Boy? That was your first. So I mean, you were so within a year they were opening for you at L'Amour's. I mean, the progression of your band, even in the early days, was phenomenal.
Well, yeah, it was just one of those things where, first of all, they gave us the opportunity to join them on stage. We'd go see them a lot, and the Twilight Zone, which became the Gore, a couple other places.
Yeah,
Back then, the metal guys, you see different bands at these clubs all the time, and everybody, we're in our little corner in our leathers, and you got this band over there, and
yeah,
but Jim was a big fan of Obsession. He turned me on to them. I think maybe Steve knew him too, and we start going out. Hey, let's as a band. We always go out as a band, and we go out at night and we go check them out. and we get up front. And I knew Jim loved Bruce as a guitar player. He
Hmm.
loved his tone, and he was a big fan of his stuff. And it doesn't surprise me that he would have wanted to join them. But I
Yeah.
don't think that would have worked because Jim had a period where he was into all that metal stuff, Restless and Wild. I mean, that's why we worked together so well. But it's not what he would have kept doing the rest of his life, and it would. I just things work out for a reason. But yeah, we go out and we check them out, and we got to do a few shows with them actually warming up, and then after Brocken came out, I think it was all of a sudden we got an It was Studio 54. We got a gig to play there in Obsessions warming up for us. And we all talked about it. We said it just didn't feel right. And we didn't mean any disrespect. It was just um that's the way they wanted to book the show. And it kind of told me something that we're going somewhere,
Yeah.
to
I mean, it's
do
funny.
that.
They just reformed recently, and I saw them. It was a big field, Nolan Field in Ansonia over the summer. It was the first time I've seen him session since the '80s. I know that they had things during the '90s because he was with Ingve, he was with Loudness for a while, and now he's touring with. And they sound just as like Bruce is back in the band as a guitar player. I think Jay is back in the band. Jay
Oh, see,
Mazias.
for a long time he was doing it probably with it was just him.
Yeah,
Mike was, but when they said it as Obsession, I just wondered who was still in the band. I didn't know if any of them were, or if it was just him with musicians playing Obsession, which he could do. But if Bruce is back, that gives some credibility to the old music.
yeah.
And you said the drummer's back too. That's
Yep,
good.
just those three. So there's a new band member, but those three are definitely in the band, and they sounded just as good as I remember them playing in
Uh,
the old days in the '80s. So, so
yeah,
you,
I'd like to see them again. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any more shows booked. I missed that one they did. They did one locally, I think, right? Didn't they
yeah,
do it in Connecticut?
they did one in Sony, and the night before there's a place in Watertown. I can't remember the name of the
Yeah.
place, but so that night they played, and then the next day is when I saw them. There was a big festival of like 5 or 6 different days, like AC/DC tribute band. Opus's
Uh,
Dead by not Dead by Wednesday. Earth played, which is a Black Sabbath tribute band. So it was a lot of tribute bands, and then Obsession played too.
cool. Yeah, I remember the poster for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a bunch of covers, and then they go up and did their thing.
yeah.
But I would love to see them again, just to see some of that old stuff.
Oh yeah,
That first
definitely.
album rolls. The first album, Martial Law, is amazing.
I was just gonna say that. I love that EP, Martial
It's
Law.
phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It just stands the test of time. It really does. And what was the first one they put after that? Scarred for Life, was that the first?
Scar for Life was the first one. I can't remember the name of the second
Definitely
one.
dig that one. And the other one, something of Madness, um,
Method of Madness, I think.
Method of
Yeah.
Madness,
And I think
and
that's where they had their big single "For the Love of Money."
The Love of Money. Okay.
Yeah, that was I think one of their first videos they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, you're right. Yeah, a bunch of good guys. I remember them well.
Yeah,
They gave us an opportunity, and that's important. I'll never forget the first time I was on a stage. You were doing sound check. I've never been on a stage before, never played out live like that. And I'll never forget hearing my guitar coming through not just my amp, but the stage. They have these huge side fills in the day, which you don't see that anymore. It was like the hugest thing. And I was like, wow, the power that you felt on. I can remember it so well, like it was yesterday. I remember I was standing and I was like, wow, this is going to be awesome. And back then, you play a club, you have, a few hundred people coming to see you. And it could be a Thursday night, it's not even a Saturday. But wow, I'll never forget that first time we played with them. It was just like, this is it. I'm on stage, man.
oh yeah. Believe me, as I mentioned before, I was a singer in a metal band back in the late '80s, and I love that feeling. And as you said,
Cool.
I would play to Brickenwood all the time, and it could be a Thursday night, it could be a Saturday night. There'd be 150 people. It was a small club, so
Yeah,
it was really
yeah,
packed. People are just there was no fighting for the most part. I think everybody's getting along.
yeah.
They're moshing. They're having fun,
And they
banging
were
their heads.
headbanging up front. I mean,
Yeah.
they were actually into it. Now
Yes.
they all stand back. You gotta nobody wants to go near the front of the stage. It might look like you're into it.
I
And
know.
and and it's like, Jesus, back then everybody was up front banging their heads. It was a real deal.
Yep.
All their leathers and all their outfits they wore. It was the coolest thing to see that from the stage. Some of the shows Fates did, I got to do with them. The biggest being Motorhead, Anthrax. I'll never forget some of those shows and people right up front. Big crowd of people. And I was like, fuck, I haven't seen that in a long time.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about the date for that one was November 22nd, 1985 at L'Amour's when you played with Motorhead. What was that show like?
What do you think? Fates 40 and Motorhead kind of don't go together.
No.
Okay. So I felt that way. We were, you don't care when you're warming up for Motorhead, but what I remember, and I have a tape from that show. I have a cassette tape from that show. All right. And it's great. We come out, we sound great actually. The
Yeah.
first song we opened up with was fantastic. And as soon as it stops, like kind of quiet, you hear one guy, boo, like I'm like, all right. So we just kept playing. I don't think we even heard it, to tell you the truth, on stage. It might have been the tape that brought it out, but yeah. But I remember it well, being it was a mob in there,
Yeah.
and the crowd did get into it. We didn't play to a crowd, like we didn't walk up the stage and say, "Oh my God, nobody even came and watched this." No, we had a crowd, and it was good. But on the tape, it just sounds different, and it's like, wow, um, you know, and and then we were supposed to do another show with them, and Lemmy had issues with, I think it was the PA setup or something. And I know we were kind of all outside and we're hanging out. We didn't bring any equipment in yet, I don't think. But and next thing you know, it got canceled.
Oh.
You know, and so I remember we're all sitting there on picnic tables talking and stuff. Lemmy was there, and the whole band, and I remember he had a bottle of something he was drinking, and he was kind of pissed off because of what happened. So we didn't get to do the show that night. That would have been cool, but
Yeah,
it was.
what was he like? Because I hear so many great stories about him. Say he's like he was such a fun guy, and he was
I
really cool
can't
to the people.
remember. I'd be honest. I just remember, my memory is some brief conversation outside, seeing him
Yeah,
pissed off about what happened, but can't say I remember much more about that.
yeah.
Can't remember much more about anything. All right, I have moments though. You ask me something, I may have a moment I can remember. About certain things.
Well, here's one thing about. We'll go back to the very beginning of the origination of Fate's Warning. What was the original name of the band?
Misfit.
Okay, so I want to talk about that because this is what's really impressive. Why did you change the name of the band?
Well, we were actually playing a show in New Haven one night, and forgot the club. Might have been Twilight Zone, and we saw there was a band. At least I remember it this way. We saw the Advocates. There was another band playing New Haven, I think the same night, called
Mm,
Misfit.
yeah,
And we didn't know much about them. At least I didn't.
yeah.
But from that, we realized we had to change our name because they already had some music out, and whatever. I don't remember it being anything more than that, other than us saying we got to change our name.
All right. Well,
So
go ahead. Sorry, because I heard something more. That's why I wanted to ask you about that.
there might be fresh in my memory. I'll tell if I hear it and I remember it, I'll say yes.
Right.
But
And this is what impressed me about this because you're a local band playing local clubs, and Glenn Danzig, who is the lead singer of the Misfits, called Jim and said, "If you don't change the name, we're going to sue you." That was according to the book I'm reading.
that might be true, because I was almost going to say to you, I think somebody contacted us about changing it, but I couldn't remember if that was true, or because that happened to me in another band. So I'm thinking about it. But that could be true, and he could have heard about it because we were playing in the same city. He might have saw it that night, for all we know. So I don't know when the timing was, but it was definitely after that gig, and we already knew. We were already talking about it, saying, "Oh shit, there's another band called Misfit."
Yeah.
I didn't know who Misfit was at the time. I don't know if they're how popular they were at the time. Maybe they were, but I don't remember. I didn't know much about that music.
Okay, well, yeah, they're a really popular punk band. Then he went on to some other bands,
When
but
did they come
what
out? When did Misfit come out? Roughly.
it was definitely early '80s when they were out in the punk scene. I want to say like 81, 82. They were started to get really popular around that time.
Okay.
And then he was in other bands, and he became a solo artist who did that song "Mother." I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
but the reason I bring that story up is because I'm impressed that like a major star at that time heard of a local Connecticut band and said, who are you guys and why are you using my name? Which you weren't using name. Their names are the Misfits, not Misfits. I mean, it's very similar, but the fact that he actually heard who you were, called Jim, and said that. So you were making I was impressed that you were making a name for yourself, even at the very early stages where these bigger bands are calling you up and said, "Hey, what's going on here?"
See, I look at it like back then I would have known who Glenn Danzig is, and
Yeah,
you got to remember being all young kids, and he was young too at the time.
yeah,
You know, you might just do something like that because a lot of what you think about musicians now is based on the lore of what they've become over the years. You know, now you think of Glenn Danzig and you're like, oh my God. But back then we were all just young kids playing in bands, and it doesn't probably wasn't as weird to think of it being done back then because I don't know how big Misfit was at the time, but if they were that big, then yeah, it would be kind of weird. But if we were just both bands coming up, it wouldn't be as weird as you think back then, you know?
yeah. And they were pretty big in the punk scene at that
Okay.
time. So I remember that. Like I
Okay.
was young and I started to appreciate their music more as I got older. But I know going back into the archives, they definitely had a lot of albums back out early on. So you two were
Okay.
both coming up around the same time. So I want we've been talking the very beginning of Fate's Warning, and what impressed me about Jim was that he quit high school in ninth grade. His parents offered to send him to Hartford Conservatory, and according to the book, it says lack of confidence kept him from applying. He's completely self-taught, and so is Steve Zimmerman, the drummer. So
Yep.
these guys are just, I mean, you hooked up with some very talented people.
Oh yeah. I know I did. And that's what makes it work. You know, when I first met Steve, I've never played with a drummer that was that good. All right.
Yeah,
Guy we were playing with was good, but you know, I listened to some of these old tapes, you know, we were just kids playing. Steve was the first guy that blew me away. Like this guy could be playing for Maiden. That's how I used to think. He just had this huge kit, number one, in his basement, and it was like, wow, you saw that thing. And he played the son of a bitch like he owned it. And if you ever watch Steve, one of my favorite things was watching Steve on stage in at practice because he is so into it. You know, he doesn't know how to just sit back and play. You saw it in his face and stuff, and the way, and he would talk about stuff like after practice. You go, you hear that part I did? He'd be like 10 times. He'd have to tell everybody, making sure we. So he really took pride in all those little
yeah.
notes and those things. They weren't, you know, taken for granted by himself. And yeah, great musician. Playing with Steve woke me up as a guitar player. I started playing better because I had somebody who could play behind me. That really made a difference in the way I played. And then I finally found another guitar player. I never had another guitar player really in any bands. And when Jim came in, of like minds, you know, somebody who we had a lot of the same likes and of music, which was our connection. And then he turned me on to things, and maybe I turned him on to some stuff. But it was just that's what good musicians do. You know, you have to be on the same page musically, and one good musician will enhance another person's playing. You know, John Arch. I think John Arch grew as a singer playing in the band. You know,
Oh
he was
yeah.
good when we started, but the writings that he had to sing to made him who he is now. He created his own style, you know, which is cool. You know,
And he has you to thank for it. Let's talk about that because he was in a band called Hollywood Tees. And how did you hear about him and how did he find out about Fate's Warning?
all right. Well, we had a guitar player friend in Bristol, Connecticut. We all knew him and would see his name is Jamie Town, really nice guy. And we, you know, he was definitely one of those rockers. He was the guy who wore the spandex and would wear the leopard shirt. He lived it even when
Yeah.
you wasn't on stage. All right, it was just that was Jamie. Matter of fact, he sold me my first guitar, which was used on Brocken. It was a handmade guitar. I don't know who made it. Don't know the story behind it, but I remember I got that from him. So anyway, we hear that he's playing this club in Bristol, and me and my friend Mike, um, who at the time, um, I'm trying to think, he must. This is where timing is a little weird, but yeah, Mike was still in the band. We went and saw the band to see Jamie and John Arch as the singer. So you go walk in a club, all right, back in '83, and you hear a singer who sounds like John Arch. Can you imagine what you would be thinking? You'd be like, holy fuck, this guy can sing. I mean, he was hitting Maiden. I don't know what songs they were doing. I don't think it was all that, but we heard enough to know he could sing Maiden. And we go back to practice, and we're like, you got to hear this guy. Yeah, blah, blah. So I think we all went as a band, if I'm not mistaken, back to go see him. And we talked to him that night and said, hey, would you be interested? And sure enough, he was interested in coming down. So he came down for an audition, and I have a tape of the first audition.
Wow.
And he comes in. The first song we sang was Fly to Icarus.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the matter of fact, I'll take it back. The version is on Spectre Within, one of the reissues. They have the bonus tracks.
Okay.
Listen to that version of Flight, and that was his. I'm pretty sure that was his first recording because we wanted to record him to hear what he sounded like. So you listen to that scream at the end. I can still remember everybody looking at each other like, "Holy fuck!" Like we already knew. We didn't even ask him. We just knew he was going to be the guy. It wasn't a
Yeah.
matter of if these guys were a little, you know, unsure about things. That did it, man. So that's the story.
Yeah. Well, who did you have singing before that? Did you have anybody?
Nobody really. Our bassist Mike, my friend Mike, was doing some singing. He wasn't the best singer,
Yeah.
and kind of why we went looking for another singer. But he kept us going. As me, Steve, especially started off. We were just getting our chops down. We weren't ready to play out, but we were just enjoying learning new songs. And then Jim came in, and I think that's where we started realizing something wasn't right with the vocals, and we needed we hey, if you're into Maiden, you want Bruce Dickinson singing for you. All
Yeah.
right. No band ever found one. We did. We found the guy who goes up there in the ranks of Bruce, Jeff Tate, and you
Mm-hmm.
got John Arch. Those three voices are some of the three best voices in metal. And I found one at a freaking back room of a pizza joint. All right. When
I
there was a
love it.
band. It really is a cool story. And so shit happens for a reason, I guess.
Oh, definitely. And like I said, he's such a unique voice, but I could definitely picture him singing all the Peace of Mind album and anything like that. It's just, I love his voice. And a question for you regarding this. I don't know if you were in the band when this was happening, but according to what I'm reading, um, besides the fact that, one of the reasons he left the band was because he would start getting anxiety attacks because he didn't like being on stage and just made him so nervous. And I was surprised by that. Did you see that when you were in the band with him, or would that come later on?
You talking about John?
Yeah, this is what they were saying
Oh,
in
I
the
saw it with John. He throw up after before a show and this and that. We caught some of that going on. John had anxiety big time about playing live.
wow.
We all knew that, but
Yeah,
I think we supported him in some way. And guess what? When the show came on, I never saw anything in his performance that was ever a
yeah,
problem. You might notice it when he was talking in between, but I would be the same way. He never really did a lot of that. And he might be talking, he talked really fast or something, and didn't know what to say to the audience sometimes because we were all green. But man, when the music came on, no problems. It
yeah.
was before and when we talk about doing something, he'd get anxious about it. But I think that happens to some people, and when you get in the environment, it all seems to work out.
Yeah.
You
Well, I think
know,
that's a
and
good thing in a way because that means you're not complacent and you want to be the best you can be. If you just
oh
want to be
yeah,
like, I know I'm good, whatever, who cares about the audience? That
yeah,
is a bad attitude. Having an attitude where like, no, I got to be good. I got to
yeah,
getting
yeah,
nervous before a show. I mean, I've read interviews where actors who've been doing it for 30 years still throw up before they start filming something. Then they're like, all right, let's do it. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's kind of what it was, and John did a fine job with it all because his performances were phenomenal.
yeah,
I remember getting chills sometimes on stage. You write these songs, and now you're playing them live, and you hear him do something. I'm like, I know the audience just felt that. Like as a person who likes good vocals, when John hit something great live, you'd notice it. So it was cool.
yeah. Well, even Ray Alder said my biggest influence was John. He was John's my favorite singer, and that's why when during the 30th anniversary of the Wake and the Guardian, They both came out on stage and they were both going to do the Guardian back and forth. And John says, "I got this." And Ray just said, "Go ahead." He just smiled and let John take it away. And I'm so
Really?
glad he's back singing. And I met John I've seen him so many times back in the Awaken the Guardian tour, and even with you and Spectre back at the Agora days. But I saw him, he was on a Dead by Wednesday album, my friend Opus that you said you know,
Yeah.
and he sang a song. So I got a chance
Yeah.
to talk to him for a while. It's such a down to earth, nice guy.
Oh, John's one of the best guys, man.
Yeah,
He really is. He really is he is what he is. You know, if you meet him once, you're seeing John. You know, he's very respectful. I always said John was very respectful to everybody he talked to, and he's just a good dude. But that song he did with Dead by Wednesday, I dug that song. I
yeah,
thought that was pretty cool. You know, he put a good mark on that song. You know, he
yep.
really, really did.
And it's funny in hindsight. After talking to him, I remember the first thing he says, "So my voice is shot tonight." I said, "You sounded phenomenal." "No, no, no, I wasn't that good. It wasn't that good." I said, "No, John, you were great." "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." It was funny now thinking back on after what I'm reading and talking with you. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
He gets in his head about it. That's okay. But
yeah,
good. I'm sure what you said to him meant a lot. You
yeah,
know.
and I was being completely honest. I thought he sounded great. I said I did not notice anything. Speaking of great singers, I had no idea that you sang. I was watching videos for this interview, and I said I saw Freedom's Reign. I said, "Wait a minute, is that Victor?" And I went back. And you were singing. I saw the video. I saw was Black Sabbath by the band Black Sabbath.
Oh, that one. That's one of my ones. I'm not too. I don't mind talking about. Let's just say I became a vocalist out of need
Mm-hmm.
because it, Freedom's Reign was not something I meant to join. It was basically helping my friend Mike's band recording a demo for him. And I said I can do it. So I spent the whole day. We set everything up. They recorded their instrumentals. That's all they were. And I go home, I'm mixing, and I started to come up with some harmonies in my head. And I said, "You mind if I try singing some stuff?" I was doing some singing in another kind of a garage band I was playing. And it's just something that happened. And by the time we did, you never even heard there was a first album, which never really came out widespread. But the second one, which is the Freedom's Reign album, that's the one where I actually went in the studio and I'm recording stuff. And I'm like, I made it work to a point where it gave the songs presence, it gave the songs melody. Singing live sucks, okay? It really sucks when you're singing. I lost my first show I ever did. I never sang a lead vocal in my life on stage, and I was a screaming song, and I came out. I don't think I finished 3 songs. I swear, like somebody took my lungs and just ripped them out. I went to hit a note, and and I was like all over the place. And I had to like finish the night doing this, and it was so embarrassing. It sucked, and I had multiple issues with singing on nights and stuff. The band's loud. You're trying to sing over the through my voice out. To this day, I think I messed up my voice. So that was my foray into it. But I like doing it. It was fun for me. It was like I said, I tried different things in my life, and playing bass was one that was really weird for a while. And being a singer on a couple records was kind of weird too. Now I like to say I'm a backup singer. I think I'm a fine backup singer. I do great stuff. I think in the Elvis tribute, I think I'm more of a singer in that band than I am a guitar player. It's a big part of the show, hearing those harmonies and stuff. But that's about as far as I want to take it. But I think I can be behind somebody and give you the harmony. I got good ears, so I can hear harmonies and I can pretty much knock those out as long as it's in my range. And but when you're playing with people like John Arch and Dana from Mythosphere and Brian Ballack, I've been blessed to have the greatest singers on all my records. I don't know how the freak that ever happened because everything I've been a part of, not one thing was connected to the other. I just found these great singers who worked, and we like Arduini Ballack would be nothing if it didn't have Brian's vocals on that album. Mythosphere, it's so important to have the right singer on stuff. And
Oh yeah.
so I say if I can back up one of these guys and put some shine on something live, and that's my calling right now vocally. That's it.
I want to talk about Arduini Ballack because he
Yeah.
is from a band named Argus, and they're
Oh,
out of the Tampa Bay area. So how'd
no,
you?
no, they're actually from uh Maryland area.
Oh, okay.
Maryland, yeah, they're
Right.
more down that way.
Okay. Well,
Virginia, Maryland, and whatever.
either way, how did you hook up with him? Was it through playing with different bands?
Brian, again, when I told you the story about how I got into Beelzebufuzz, another band that I was being told to check out from was Argus. Great band, you guys, you and Freedom's Reign would be great together. So we ended up actually doing a couple shows together, Freedom's Reign and Argus. And I became a huge fan of Argus. Again, when I heard their first record, Boldly Stride the Doom, that album, you ever hear any Argus?
No,
You gotta
the two bands you
go
mentioned,
find
I'm going
some.
to check out right after this interview.
Go find some Argus, man. Because if you like Brian's voice, that band is phenomenal. Heavy, but good, catchy stuff. Little Thin Lizzy-ish at times. So they blew me away, and then we got to do a couple shows together, and I got to know Brian a little. Didn't hear from him for a few years. I was working on Arduini Balik, and I had a singer, phenomenal singer from Brazil. His name is Pastor, Pastore. Look that guy up. This is a guy who's like a Rob Halford screaming like Painkiller stuff, and he nails this stuff, and he has a great soft voice. We were gonna do the album together. Had all the record music was done, like really was done for a while, and he was gonna do stuff, but it didn't work out. He just couldn't come up with stuff. I started realizing I think some of his band members might have helped him with lyrics and the vocal melodies. He can sing stuff, but I'm not sure if he's a writer, which is fine.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. And finally, after hearing some of his ideas, I made the decision. And I told him that morning at work, I'm typing. I said, it just is not working. And I said, I feel bad. And he's like, no, no, don't. Within an hour, I'm in my office and I see a message there from Brian, the singer, out of the blue. We never talk or nothing. Hey, dude, what's up? Now, when I see something like that, my thought is somebody's checking in with you to see if you want to play together. When a
Yeah.
musician texts you that you never talk to, it's chances are they want to do something with you. And I told my story. I remember typing it all to him. I said, and I was kind of down about it. He goes, "Hey, I'll do a song with you if you want." I said, "You would?" I'm like, "Sure." I go, maybe I'll have some different singers. Well, it became the whole record because he loved the music,
Wow.
one after another. And that's how I got involved with Brian. And Brian, I wish we could have done another record. I really do. That was, I'm proud of the first one. And I said we had another record in us, but I lost touch with the drummer. See, the drummer, we were literally finishing the last few tracks in the studio, and he had to stop. He had a sick father, I remember, and he had to go take care of his father, which lasted a while. And he just never, this guy to this day, I don't think has ever played drums again. The guy you hear on Arduini Ballad just stops. And
Wow.
it's like, and I kept trying to get back with him. I really kept trying. I even met him once, but I felt like he was my crutch. I needed him because he understood my playing, and I could come up with riffs and really flow. And I lost that, and I
Wow.
didn't trust other drummers. I'm like, no one else is going to get it. That's just me being in my head, but I'm like, no one else is going to be good enough or get the ideas. And I kind of squandered it. And Brian and I, we have actually a few tracks ready to go with some drums on them. But outside of that, I still feel like if I couldn't play with this guy, I don't know how I could write another record. And actually, I've kind of lost that interest of writing. I feel like I'm riffed out. I've
Yeah.
come up with 100 riffs, and sometimes I feel like I'm recreating myself. But I do like what I'm doing now, more of the layering stuff. So Brian and I both feel we have an album. We would love to do one. Time will tell if that situation happens. What'll happen? I'll meet a drummer somewhere one night, the right guy, and just have a situation. Has to kind of just flow.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting for that to happen now for 8 years, and it hasn't happened. So, but maybe we'll do a record together because he's a singer, another one that's a shame where Argus puts out all these great records, and their last one they put out was the best. All right, best recording, best vocal, best songs. I thought that album was putting them over the edge. They never even did one show for the album. Band kind of fell apart. Just
Wow.
everybody had commitments. I know the other guitar player who joined them, who actually wrote some of the best stuff on that last record and recorded them. He has a studio. he had a very busy job working with the WWF, and he used to set up, and he couldn't always be there, I heard, and whatever. And like, you put out your best record after a career. They've gone to Europe multiple times. This is a band. I'm like, this band's got to make it, and they just fell off the face of the earth. And
Yeah.
so that's like Arduini Ballad. We had a great album, which could have done a lot, but we actually, I don't know if you knew this, but we did a couple shows together a couple of years ago, about a year and a half
Wow.
ago. Yeah. Maryland Doom Fest. We got onto that, onto the fest. So I put the band together with, basically, it was Entierro, which is, my Connecticut band. Great drummer, another guitar player, and we needed 3 guitars to pull off that album. That's how much left. So the drummer's wife is a phenomenal guitar player and a musician. Maybe is a better way to put it, of her own right. She plays piano, she plays drums in a band, and she plays guitar. And she did a lot of more of the atmospheric stuff, or maybe just doubled on a chord where we had to do a harmony together, me and the guitars from Entierro. So that's how that got together. We played the Maryland Doom Fest, and we played the New England Stoner Doom Fest. There probably is some video up on YouTube of it, and phenomenal. We pulled off playing that album live, which I didn't think we could do. I thought the album was like a Sergeant Pepper, where it's got too much going on, and you can't really. It wasn't meant to be played live. I actually embellished and said, I ain't playing this album out live. I'm going to record this. I'll put 3 guitar harmonies at once. So who cares? But we did it, and I felt like that was a closure to that band in a way. We talked about doing more shows as a band, but the logistics are tough. I'm trying to do Entierro stuff, and doing 2 bands with the same band is too much.
Yeah, I
So
can imagine. Plus you have your own responsibilities with work and family. It's just like you said before, when you're 20 years old, the world's the limit. You could do whatever you want. You can take off for a while, but then the older you get, the more responsibilities you have. So yeah, you have a pretty good thing going on right now. Now, the album you're talking about, was that the Gates of Hell album you're referring to?
you talk about Entierro,
Yeah,
or
Entierro. For Entierro, or were you talking about? Because who is the what album? What band were you talking about? Maybe I.
I was talking about Arduini Ballad.
Oh, okay. Sorry, William Ballack.
That's the one that, very complicated type album,
Yeah, yeah.
and we got the band together.
Okay.
So, but like I said, that I feel like that might have been only one album I did with the guys, or should I say the guys, myself.
Yeah.
To me, I'm glad if I only did one, I'm proud of that record. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to hear what I'm about, go pick up that record. Everything else, I'm a part of something. I'm a part of Dana's sound. I'm a part of this guy's sound. But when I did that album, that's me being me. And
Okay.
a lot of I can see my Spectre days to this day, where we grew as a band on that album is what became why I am where I am today. Because I had all these ideas on Spectre, like the Orphan Gypsy solo at the beginning.
Mhm.
I remember doing that song, and I wrote the harmony literally in the studio, and I was starting to create all these sounds, and I was doing a little more of. There's probably more on there I'm doing you don't realize I'm doing, but and that became my style from Spectre, and that's what Arduini Ballad is. It's a growth of my style from the Fates days, far gone, just like Jim is far gone now. We've
Yeah.
gotten to be much better musicians, and that album became the one that I'm so proud of, because it's something that from top to bottom I took control. I produced it, I mixed it with the studio. I mean, it's like it or not, it's the way I like to hear it. Every little nuance I wanted to be right. So
Well, I like the fact you still use the studio, because I know so many bands that just record things at home and then they mix it together themselves, which sounds great. But you still go into the studio, have it professionally done, and
I mix it. Here's what I do is at home. What I do at home is my guitar stuff.
okay.
I can record my rhythms, and I definitely all my layers and solos. I sit here at night, get different sounds. I play with my sounds. I have an Axe Effects. It's a great tool for guitar sounds, and I record stuff, and it's very inspirational. And if I had to pay a studio to sit there for 4 hours, I probably wouldn't be as inspired, because I have to do it.
Yeah.
Where at night I come up here and I'm like, if I'm in the mood to do it, I'm like, I feel like recording tonight. So, but everything beyond that, drums are done in the studio. The mixing's done in the studio. All that stuff. Bass, I don't like to record any of that. So vocals, everybody does their own part in the studio. So I really used my studio just for my tracks.
Yeah.
And when I do like Mythosphere, they just sent me all the recording tracks, which are the studio drums, the studio guitars, and a scratch vocal. And that's where I started putting my layers on, and I just sent them back. The first, what did I say? I have five. I think 5 out of 5 of them were done, and I sent those to them the other day. So I can do my tracks here, but now the guy in their studio is going to take my tracks and do a final mix. You know what I'm saying? But I give them my sounds. I like to produce my own sounds these days. I don't say word trust, but I like finding my own sounds and saying that's what I want to hear. So
Well,
leave it there.
I
Don't
completely
touch it.
understand. Like if
Don't touch
somebody said you have to have, like I mentioned this interviewing authors, when somebody says you have a deadline by in 6 months or a year, I think I would get brain freeze. But if I could just write it whenever I'm inspired and like when I think of something, instead of just like, oh my
That's
God, I
tough.
have to get this done. I'm on a time frame, and then that's I think where I'd have writer's block. And same
Mhm.
thing probably with musicians. If you were forced to do it, but like you said, you get up 3 o'clock in the morning one day, like you have the next day off. Yeah, let me
Right.
just I'm inspired right now. Let me record, put some things
That's the
down.
best way. You write your best stuff that way.
Yeah.
And on top of it, you would think it may take longer in a sense because you have to be inspired, right?
Yep.
You may go a week and not want to do nothing. But in all honesty, it's faster for me because if I had to go in the studio, I'd have to always be booking schedules. I'd probably waste time in the schedule in the studio. But when I'm home, like you say, you write your best lines. People write their best books, the best chapters, the best whatever comes from that moment, and it's right there. My computer's right here. So I like that. That's just the way I think most musicians are
Yeah.
doing stuff these days anyway.
Another thing I hear from bands, or especially if they have something really popular, this whatever studio say, you know what, just basically release the same album with a different title because whatever worked last. But especially with Fate's Warning, you guys changed all the time. Was Metal
Oh yeah.
Blade very supportive of that?
Never once questioned us.
I love that.
Never. They like any Brian Slagle is a fan of metal, one of the
Yeah,
biggest fans of metal I know. And when he hears something, I think the last thing he wants to hear is an album that sounds like the last one. He's looking to hear like, what are you doing now? What's the new sound you got? How's this song? And the sounds changed and the style of writing changed. So I saw that in just the first few releases, but you look at, I mean, I could actually say Parallels and Inside Out are very similar. That's
yeah.
an album where that's like the sister of Parallels, and it's good. But for the most part, they never did that. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? I mean, even Disconnected was kind of its own record. Nothing really sounded like Disconnected. X had some elements of it,
Yeah,
but you could see some different. Everything was Jim was always coming up with different thought process.
yeah,
Uh, and honestly, when I saw the last couple of records, especially the last two, Theory, when they did Theories, it was like they were it was even deeper songs than the one before. And then when they put out the last one, I felt like that one was more like Theories. It was like that to me was almost very similar in style. And maybe Jim said he doesn't want to write anymore, or just for Fates, he said.
yeah. That's what I heard.
I can totally understand that because he's come up with just about every avenue you can come up with, and over the years, as even myself, I mean, maybe I've done that much, but you get to a point where like, there's nothing new I'm going to come up with now. I feel like I've explored, I can repeat stuff, but he might have just felt like after those last two records, I'm going to make another one, and maybe he didn't have anything new he wanted. Well, he actually did have something new to say. He didn't want it to be a Fates record because it wasn't Fates. He was like, I don't. So that's the kind of musician I've always wanted to be. Is you take one album at a time. You play if you want to play. You don't record if you don't want to record. And right now, Jim just decided to put some type of pause on at least his recording of Fates. I've heard there's some shows maybe in the pipeline down the end of the year. That's rumor.
Yeah,
But I respect that because as a musician, the best way to be a musician is to not do it for anything but yourself. No label, know this, know that. You're gonna write your best stuff, you know. And Jim, I know, has his own studio, so he does everything at home, like I do. You know, you come up here, you get inspired. You know, I could spend a day up here. You know, go downstairs for my wife for a quick meal. Got to go back up, and I don't see her for like a day. And you know, it's oh yeah, I can remember when I don't work anymore in a facility like I did, but there were times, man, I'd be so pumped when I went to bed on a song. I'd get up first thing in the morning, and before I went to work, I'd have to go in my studio and listen to it one more time. And I'd hear something, and I'd grab my guitar and put another part in before I went to work. I mean, I get crazy like that stuff. So it's kind of good to have peace in between bands. You know, I had about, I don't know how long it's been since Entierro recorded earlier this year. I think it was January we recorded. So I had a nice lull, and I'm anxious now to get this Mythosphere done. It's sounding really good, man. Oh, can't wait for you to hear the new one.
I cannot wait to hear it.
I'll
Please,
send you tracks once we have some. All right.
please do that. Thank you very much for that. And speaking of, we'll go back to Jim for a minute because there's something he came out with in '93. It was just him messing around doing some soul stuff in between fates. It was called Impressions, which I'm sure you know of. It's got a violin, it's got flutes, it's such a big departure of what he was doing with fates. But I
Yeah,
like that because it was
I got both of those. He put out two of them back in those days. He sent me, I think that one's called First Impressions or
first
was
impressions.
that
That's
it?
what it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I remember him sending me that, and yeah, I love that. That's where Jim is. It's his happy place. You know, he was doing some really cool acoustic stuff, beautiful stuff. I wish he did more of that. Actually, you know, he had two great albums, and I know he was a big fan of that. But it might have been a period where he did two records, got it out of him. You know,
Yeah.
move on to something else. Just like OSI, it's like was a totally different type of project for him. You know, and he did three records with them, and he got out of it. You know, it's like sometimes you just things have their beginning, middle, and end, you know.
Yep.
And it could be one record, it could be 10 records. But that's the beauty. What he did, you know, he's done a lot of weird stuff. He did one album that was all based on noises and stuff.
Oh, really?
That album, I actually couldn't put my teeth into it, nor I don't think you're supposed to.
I never heard
It
that
was,
one.
yeah, it's you have to go to his website. I don't know where you could
Okay.
find, but he used like objects and stuff to create noises and make these, and he put effects on them. And I totally dig the idea of what it is all about.
Yeah.
It's just as a listener, it's not something you listen to. But if you appreciate that stuff, there's probably something in there you're gonna hear. But I found that was Jim definitely going over the deep end and saying, I'm just doing something really weird, probably gonna sell one copy. I don't care. You know, he wanted to record this, and on top of it, he gets to put it out. You know, some people make stuff up like that just for their own ears, but he got it out, and good for him. You
Yeah,
know,
no, and I love the fact that he's being creative. He's trying something different.
yeah,
He's not just doing it over and over again. There's a
exactly.
band, I can't remember the name of the band, but Mike Patton from Faith No More and Dave Lombardo were in a band together. It was just a side project, and it was very similar to what you just described that Jim did. It was, I love the lineup, but it's just, to me, it wasn't listenable. I was like, I
Yeah,
see what they want to do, but I just
yeah.
couldn't put it in and just start getting into it. So I understand that. But it was interesting. They did one about all movie themes, and it was just all
Oh,
different
really?
noises. I can't remember the name of the band. I haven't even thought about them until you just mentioned that. So it's been a long
Yeah.
time. But
That's,
I want to talk
listen,
about
I
your
wouldn't have
writing.
thought about anything either until you brought it up. So
Take a trip down memory lane
yeah,
in the Claw's Corner. I want to talk about your writing style or writing process with Jim, because I know, as I mentioned, according to when the book, Frank didn't really write anything in the middle. Right now, where I am in the book, I'm not sure if he started writing again. And I know you wrote, was it Orphan Gypsy? You wrote Without a Trace, and did you write any other songs from
I
Spectre?
I co-wrote a lot of Traveler in Time. Actually, is me.
Yeah.
And Jim's parts totally made the song. And Pirates of the Underground, he had a song called Radio Underground, but we didn't like certain parts of it. And I had a song I was working on, and we just basically those are the two songs we sat and literally took parts and made it work. You know, I mean, I can listen to it this day, and I say that's my part, that's Jim's part. You know, I see it, I know it in my head, which is cool. To Traveler in Time, you know, that whole beginning is basically Jim doing that part, and then I came up with the with the singing, the verse
Yeah.
part, that's all me, and the bridge and all that. So we all had our parts, and that's how we wrote together when we wrote together.
Mm.
For the most part, I would just, it was just go home, write a song, come up with some riffs,
Yeah.
start putting it together in some fashion on cassette or something. And you generally would have to come down and play it for people. I got this new song, so everybody listen to you play the riff. And we would probably start with a few riffs at a time, work it together. Okay, here's the next part. It goes like this. Now we try to put A and B together, and Jim would do the same thing. He'd come in, I remember like Epitaph. He had to show me the picking on that part where it gets real slow in the middle.
Yeah.
I would do that part, and then he does the little solo over that. So he would show me parts, and here's your part because I got something I'm going to play over. Or I would say, Jim, this I want you to play this part because I'm going to do a harmony in this part. It was just even if it was his song or my song, strictly, it would still be you wrote the song, Jim, but I came up with the harmony part, or maybe I came up with some little part in your song, or a
Yeah.
certain riff. And I know in Epitaph, that's his song, but there's definitely a few parts in there that came from my ideas, just certain little sounds of maybe I wouldn't call it the writing of the song, but there's certain parts that the part that goes
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that was all that was a riff that I came up with while we were just chugging, and then John sings to it. He ends up singing to that part. So that those are the ways we would complement each other's songs. It's not enough to give you a credit. It's enough to say that as a band, I put my 2 cents into it, and I like doing that kind of stuff. And we even did it on Brocken. Night on Brocken was definitely a two-part song. I'm pretty much the first half of the song, and Jim's the slow part towards the end.
Yeah.
And but I wrote the harmony that's in the slow part. Even though it was his song, I wrote the complete harmony, and so I remember some of those things. But for the most part, that's how we worked.
Well, yeah. So that's a great way to work because maybe he has the foundation song, but you breathed life into it. So without you, the song would be nothing like it is now. So, and I love that. I love it's a great
Great.
combination.
To some degree. I wouldn't take away. He came down. He had a strong idea, but it was the whole band. Jim would say, "Okay, show us the guitar riff." You got Steve on drums. Just his way he played,
Yeah.
he knew how to play to Jim's writing. John just knew how to come up with the vocal lines. I knew how to compliment Joe on the bass. So as a band, you all add something to that
Hmm.
simple guitar idea. And sometimes bands don't have that chemistry, but we did. We didn't know it. It was just being ourselves. But Steve, especially as a drummer, his style, I come down with a riff. I couldn't wait to hear what he was going to come up with as a drum part, and that's what really made the songs. And we would talk a lot, but if it was your song, you seemed to have a lot more of the play and how you wanted it. That we
Yeah.
definitely allowed that. And Jim had a lot of certain thoughts how he wanted things played, so that's where I learned new styles. I was forced to learn new. We got into this on the Spectre, what we called playing the chords in the first and the fifth. So we complemented in harmony doing chords, and there's a lot of that on the beginning of Traveler in Time. That's exactly what it is. Those first few chords, but we incorporated that a lot in the songs, and I think we picked up on some of that. Maybe some Merciful Fate was doing it, and it just became a style that I use still to this day.
Yeah.
It's like it's just there. Jim was always finding different ways to put chords together. He liked to find things that were different. He didn't want things to be straightforward,
Yeah.
and it was challenging sometimes, but we would find ways to play off each other, and look what happened. So
Yeah. No. Well, you mentioned another song, and I want to talk about this because there's a very cool story attached to it. There's the song "Pirates of the Underground." It's all about music censorship. This was around the PMRC time,
right.
and let's talk about you talking to Uncle Frank Zappa on the telephone. I love this story.
It's a true story. I was in the studio with Spectre, and everybody knew I love Frank because I came down. I had my Frank Zappa shirt that you see in the Spectre cover. I had a
Yeah.
book I was reading every day. I just got for the trip about him, so everybody knew I was a big Frank guy. And somebody, I forget remember who, come running like into the studio saying, "Victor, Frank Zappa, he's on the radio and stuff. He's taking calls and all this." I'm like, oh my God. So back then we didn't have cell phones. So I ran out of the studio to a payphone outside. I remember standing at the payphone and I called in the radio station, right? Now, what are the chances? And he picks up the phone and he goes, "Hi, what can you do to help me?" And that was that. And I was like, I knew right away. I'm like, and I said, I would love to help you. I didn't even know what he was on the radio for. I wasn't even thinking about the PMRC. I didn't
Yeah.
know what I was calling into. There was
Yeah.
probably this whole thing about it, and I didn't. I'm just some fan, but I jumped on it quick. So he said, "How can I help you?" And I think it started to click as I'm talking. I'm like, well, I go, I'm telling you, I can help you. I go, I'm in a metal band, and I go, we're recording right now in California. We're about ready to go out on a tour. I go, I would love what I go, maybe I can take pamphlets and stuff and bring them to the shows and put out information for people and stuff. He goes, that sounds great to me. He goes, I'm gonna have you talk to my secretary. And I said, all right, awesome, man. I go, big fan of your stuff. I go, I'm in California. I go, I literally have this book I'm reading. I told him all that. He goes, well, I appreciate that. And I said, you were about to hang up, and I said, listen, can I just ask you one question? He goes, sure. I said, I'm gonna ask, you ever sing a song called Nicky Nicky Hoy? I go, and I sang it to him. I go, Nicky Nicky Hoy, we know we're diving for pearls. And I said it to him. He goes, nope, never sang that song. I said, okay, thank you. And that's exactly how he said it to me. And I hung up and I couldn't believe I talked to Frank. To make that story come around all these years, the reason I thought it was Frank was I was listening to WPLR. And I'll never forget they played that song. All right, it's a weird song. And they said it was Frank Zappa. So I never could find that record. I have all Frank's records. I could never find that. And to find out the other day, I'm on YouTube fucking around like I do, and I'm a fan of Flo and Eddie. I like Happy Together. And I'm listening to this live show this live thing they did, and all of a sudden, it's the exact same version of what I heard on PLR. Not even a replica. I know that version, and they were singing it. And all the little parts, just one little phrase that I always thought Frank was singing. It was this guy singing it, and I'm watching what I knew from 1984, and I finally get my answer this many years later. What actually? I thought I was gonna die and never know what that song was, and I
That's
found out.
funny.
It
You,
is. It
you just
really
found
is.
out recently, very recently.
Like this week, in the last week, and I'm watching it. I'm like, not only is that the song with them, it's the exact version because I remembered how it sounded, and you just never know. You get your answers sometime in life. You got to be patient.
Yeah, just like you, I am a huge Frank fan, and you know what I loved about him? Besides, that he's a musical genius. I love but he was so intelligent, and I loved when he was going up against the PMRC. He would come
Yeah.
there in a suit and tie, his briefcase, long hair, and everybody
Oh
would.
yeah, short hair.
Oh,
He
sorry,
cut
yeah,
his
sorry,
hair.
short hair. Yeah, I'm thinking
He
of D.
cut it
Snyder.
short for that.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. I was thinking D. Snyder came in later with the long hair.
Yeah, he did.
But
He did.
what I liked about him is that they were probably laughing at first, and then when he started talking, he knew more about the law than they did, and he had so many great examples of why censorship is bad. And it's just a horrible thing when they were
He
trying to do
killed
it.
him. He
Yeah,
killed. That's the thing about Frank. He knows how people look at him and make fun of him and shit like. He hates that shit. But
yeah,
and he went on to that thing knowing what they're thinking before
yeah,
they even went up, and he knew who he is. And the
yeah.
minute he opened his mouth and sounded intelligent and spoke intelligent and made so much sense, it wasn't even funny. The way he shot them down in a very respectful, professional way, they didn't know what to do.
Oh yeah,
And then D. Snyder, honestly, he's talked very well himself. Looked like a rock star
yeah.
with his cut off jean jacket, his long hair. But when he spoke eloquently and he was very, very specific. I tell you, man, they both shut them down. I
Yeah.
was very proud about that shit.
Yeah. You know what I
But
think he probably had the most impact, and the reason I think he had the most impact because he had no fight in the game was John Denver. He's saying, I think censorship is wrong, and nobody would
yep,
ever say anything bad about John Denver. So for somebody like
right.
him to come out and say, this is wrong, you shouldn't be censoring music, that really made a big impact too, I think.
I
But
did, of course.
yeah, it was just but
And you think about it, three complete opposites. Okay.
yes,
And that's what they wanted. And Frank comes in not looking like Frank, like, oh my God, he's all dressed up. D comes in looking exactly like the slobby rock star he's supposed to be. And
Yeah.
then you got John Denver, who's basically one step away from God. And all three of them come in their own way and nailed it. And they all had the same message, if you will, and it was a pretty powerful moment. Tipper Gore, oh my God,
I know.
what a piece of I'm sorry, but how do you get in your head that way and actually think you can get away with that shit? Censorship. It's just
No.
horrible.
It's horrible, and the funny thing is that it made kids want to buy the albums even more because, I got to find out why this album is so bad. So it actually
Yeah.
backfired on them. Bands were actually after a while probably hoping that they would have the label to get more sales.
Now, did you mentioned as you started this conversation here about Pirates, because Pirates of the Underground is actually all about that. That's
Yeah.
right. And at the end of the song, you ever hear the talking going on in the back room?
Yeah, is that Jerry Falwell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's doing this thing about these records are not just thrown together. They serve the devil and all this stuff. And the great one of Steve Zimmerman's great ideas. That's the kind of way Steve was. He would always do weird shit, and he was so cool at it. And he had this idea, so we put it in and just enough subliminally, so that way there's a reason why you can barely hear it. And then we were like, oh, I would love to see if one of them guys would hear this and say, see, look what they're doing. They're putting messages in. It's a message about your dumb message is all it's about.
I love that. Yeah.
It was great. That was a funny moment in our life. I love that.
Well, what was funny? Around the same time, backmasking was a big thing. People were like, oh my God, there's hidden messages if you turn the record backwards. And Overkill came out with an album, and it was the funniest thing. So in the beginning, it's like, whoop, 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 whoop. So my brothers and I we said, we have to see what it says. And then all it said was, there's no message here. You're just ruining your needle, asshole. I said, all right.
Oh my God, I got to find this now.
I got to find the album, which one it was on. It was like, what was their really popular one around 88, 87, 88, somewhere around there? I can't remember. I know. I can't. That's another one I haven't thought about in a while, but it was that one.
I can't remember.
You know what? I'll find it and I'll send you a message when I find, because you got to hear it. It's hilarious. I remember that so clearly.
I will look up probably on YouTube somewhere. Somebody probably already posted it backwards just so you could hear it.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for it.
Yeah. We
played. That was another band we played with was Overkill. We played a couple of shows with them, and they were fantastic. They were like on the rise at that time. They weren't real. I don't even know if they had a record out at the time, or maybe they just put out their first one. But man, to watch Overkill in their early days, oh, they killed. They killed, man.
As I mentioned before, to me, it was such a great time for metal. You had bands like Overkill, Death Angel, Fate's Warning, Merciful Fate, all these great Iron Maiden, Judas Priest,
Anthrax.
yes.
Every band you could think about that you think about as being true metal all came out during the 83 to say, I'm going to say 85 period, maybe 86, but really 83 to 85 it was just like candy, man. Every band was coming, and they're all still around. When I say around, they're still known. All right, some of them you don't see much anymore. Okay, I mean Angel Witch, they're still together. Have you heard their comeback album they did a few years back? Phenomenal, blows away the one I think from way back then. And other bands are doing that, and they're still together, but some aren't. Witchfinder General, remember them?
Oh yeah.
Some of these bands are still known because they came out during that period. And while they may have never made it the long run, they made a big enough name where people like me, and I'm sure people in Metallica and people in Trouble, we were all listening to these same records, and we dug them. It's just some bands got bigger because of their music and others didn't, but they were still fans, and a lot of them were just other bands checking out other bands, and a lot of respect went for a lot of these bands who I can say now didn't go too far. But you talk about Witchfinder General, they're a band that most metal people, most guitarists from that era will say, oh yeah, I remember when they came out, you just don't know who's going to make it and who's not, at the time, So
well, another thing too is, at least in Connecticut, there was so many more places for bands to play. Back then, we had Baby J's, we had Sneakers, we had the Anthrax, we had the Brick and Wood. Then later on, Sports Palace. There was so many, and then you mentioned
Oh,
was the Grotto. I think was another place. There's so many great places that
yeah,
no longer exist. Basically, bars just want bands to play cover songs. So when people are drunk, they're like, "Yeah, I know this song,"
yeah.
and they don't really
It's not the
bands come in here
same.
with originals, and it's just not even. When I was talking to some friends who are still in bands now, they're like, "Yeah, it's not the same anymore." I can imagine.
It's the hardest thing to do. Is I love playing live, but it's a lot of work to play live and get ready. And you go there, and there's like 20 people in the audience,
Yeah,
and a lot of them are just other musicians from bands waiting around, and maybe a couple girlfriends hanging out.
yeah,
And it's like, so who really actually paid to come and see us tonight? And I mean, I've been to shows like that, and Entierro's that way. I've gone to other band shows, and it sucks because, and now there's not even any clubs. All right, there were very
yeah,
few clubs. The few that Entierro would play at aren't even around anymore.
yeah,
They closed down. So like we have maybe two places in theory we could play now: Cherry Street and
yeah,
the Cellar, which we played a lot. But I just want to play a different place. I'm getting sick of playing the same places, and they're great places. But it's just there's nothing. And then when you do play, nobody shows up. You're like, what? Does anybody really care about this, or am I
yeah,
doing it for my own good? Because I'm basically taking it ain't no different than when I was a little kid, and I thought the greatest thing was if we could go plug our equipment at my driveway and play a song. We're doing a show because we're actually it's about the same thing because we're doing a show. We're going to set up and do this, but for what? So I don't mean to be negative, but it really is a negative thing when you believe in your music and you write all these songs and you put out these records, but there's nobody out there really following them, and nobody's coming to see you play really much anymore. And
yeah.
it's it's the scene that we're living in right now. It's only going to get worse. I
Yeah.
don't I don't see it. So I'm looking at myself more as a recording musician. So therefore, it can stop and end there. I don't care if anybody even buys it, as I said to you. And if I can do some shows, I'll do the right shows. Mythosphere, luckily, we got some cool gigs with them. And Entierro, we've been lucky enough to have some good shows in our life, but it's a lot of work. I
Yeah.
feel for younger bands who have this young energy, like I did back in Fates. All right, when you're and to they don't even realize the competition out there. First of all, the internet and Pro Tools and all the equipment that you can make yourself sound good. When I say million, I'm probably underestimating bands out there who can actually play far better than I ever did when I was 21 years old. There's
Hmm.
10-year-olds playing what I still can't do.
Yeah.
And they write these great songs and they write great recordings and go on Bandcamp. You could be on there all night long. You'll never get to the end of list of uh, homemade albums, right? Back then, you didn't get an album out unless you got signed to a label. So there was a handful of bands, and you were still competing. Even when I competed in '83, we luckily got signed, but that was real competition where it was one band, one tape after another. You're hoping somebody's going to hear it, right? Now you go on Bandcamp, there's a million albums on there. Everybody, so what are your chances of making it?
Hmm.
Because how many bands a year actually get to you never heard of them before, they put out their record and now that record has made them someone big. You're lucky if you find a new one every year. There's not that many. Back then it was 20 in a year. You'd have all these new acts. There's just too much out there and nowhere to play. And I don't know if you know where I'm coming from, but it's
I
just
do.
oversaturated. And you may be a great band. Tell that kid down the street, good luck. You sound fantastic, but you're going to put your hand in the pot with a million of other bands that anybody could be heard now. Anybody could do a video. Anybody could do this. It's not as it's not as special as it is. And so, what's going to make your video stand out from a million others on YouTube right now? How do people get excited? Oh, we're on YouTube. Just because you make a record or put a video out
Yep.
doesn't mean much. It's like it means something if people are talking about it and listening, and there's just too much out there. Because I can listen to a record on Bandcamp and say that band was really cool, and I'll move on to my next one. Oh, that band's really cool. I forgot about the one I just listened to, unless they really were that great. And I said, I gotta buy that record. I'd buy them right away. If I hear a song on Bandcamp and I'm like, I like it, I'll buy it from you. But if I don't, I'm probably not going to remember, and that's just, so it's a sad place to be. So that's when I told people years ago, I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it for the fame. I'm doing it for this.
Yep. And I completely understand. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I interviewed Brett Michaels, guitar player for a solo band. And he said the first time they did an album together, I'm making a number up, but it was like, say, 400,000 or 500,000 downloads. And he was so excited. He's like, Brett. And they were on a tour bus. He goes, yeah. He always had like 500,000 downloads in the first day. He goes, yeah, that's nothing. And he goes, he was so depressed. He thought it was the greatest thing. But, Brett Michaels, compared to the days in the 80s when they were doing, gold albums, platinum albums, he goes, yeah, that's nothing. So it's completely changed. The whole downloading has changed the whole landscape of music. And
it really has. It has. So I try not to dwell on it. I really don't like to dwell on it, because then I just get all worked up and I'm like, that's not why I'm doing this anymore. Most musicians my age are doing it for total, enjoyment, pleasure. Might be just called a hobby to some, I actually think my level of playing and what I do is, I call it a hobby, because I'm not trying to be professional. I just play in my room like other people get in, watch YouTube all night. Well, I get in and play my guitar, a few shows a year, get it out of my system. It feels good. It's a hobby, it's an expensive hobby too. Okay. Trust me.
Well, it's similar to me. I love doing this show. I don't make any money from, but I get to interview interesting people like you. I've done D. Wallace, Adrian Barbeau, people from different movies, bands, authors, and I enjoy this. I'm enjoying this conversation right now. And when people say, "Well, why are you doing it? You're not making any money," I said, "I'm doing it because I have a great time and it's a great hobby. I have a job that pays the bills, but this I always say, you have to need something to pay the bills, but you also need a passion. You also need a hobby." To make my life complete. I just couldn't wake up, eat, go to work, come back home, eat, go to bed, and wash, rinse, repeat. I need to do something fun.
I'd shoot myself. I really, work is great. I love working. I don't have a problem with working, but it's a job. You have to have a passion, as you just called it, in your life. My passion is my music. My wife has a passion. She has a program that helps animals. She's been doing it for 25 years. She's on the phone, always out. That's her passion. And I'm like, that defines us. People say, who are you, Victor? I'm a musician. You're a guitar player. They look at her. Oh, you're Ada Pet. Yes, that's your everybody, your passion, they're going to say, oh, you have your show.
Yes.
Everybody, you got to have something that when you're doing it, it's a total love, right? Money's not involved, and you'll do it all day long if you could, So there's some people I think don't have passions. And it's sad, it's sad. Everybody has to have something, So.
Oh, exactly. And that's why I laugh when people say, I don't understand why you want to do this. I said, I can't understand why you wouldn't want to do something that you're passionate about, because money is important, but it's not the make all or break all. It's like, if I never make a cent in this, I could care less.
Well, when they ask you that question, like you said, just ask them right back. What is it that you like to do outside of your work? They're going to give you an answer and say, there you go. Not the same thing, but it's a passion. And that's what we're talking about. You don't have to, I like to go skiing in the winter. I love, well, that's your thing. All right, go do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why it's funny. Not really anymore, but when I first started doing this, people would say, oh, I could do that. Well, then why don't you? You don't judge what I'm doing. Why don't you do your own thing and say, oh, that's easy. Well, then show me how easy it is. I don't really get that much anymore, but when I first started doing it, I would get people that would do that and say, you know what, whatever. I said, just do I'm not worried about anybody else but me. I know what I do. I know what I enjoy doing, and I don't really care what anybody else does.
The older you get, I really don't care what anybody else thinks.
Oh, yeah.
I could care less. But there's a time and a place in your life where maybe it bothers you a little, but not anymore.
Well, it's funny. I always tell people, I said, people tell, the older you get, I said, luckily I started having that attitude when I was about 18 years old. So I never really cared about anything. And it's always been like, my wife always says, boy, it must be nice living in your world. I said, yeah, come on over. It's a great place. We're waiting for you.
Say, you can who says you can't be that way, right? Be happy. Don't let nothing bother you. That's a choice. They always say you have choices in life, right? You have a choice to smile. You have a choice to frown. you decide which one you're going to be. You're going to go to work. I used to say at work, I was a nurse, and we go in some days and like we'd have 3 nurses who called out, and now we're going to have to work twice as hard. It's going to be one of those hell days. And I walk in, and my attitude is, okay, let's do it, man. And then you get the next nurse who walks in. Jesus Christ, I'm not working. Well, that's your attitude. You decided to make it a bad day. Do I want to do this? No,
No.
but I feel I'll make more out of it if I'm happy. So, if you choose, you want to go around your life being miserable all the time, be miserable, but not
Yeah.
no, not enough time in life for that stuff anymore.
No, exactly. I've always said that, and luckily, everybody always says, "Why are you always so happy?" So I'm having fun. Really? Like when I used to do stand-up comedy for a while, just as a hobby. It was another hobby I had a couple of years ago, and they're like, "Why
Oh,
are you always having so much fun on stage?" I said, "I love it." And they're like, "You actually liked it?" I said, "Why are you even doing this then?" I think the people that were saying that were more about they think they would go to this open mic or a show, somebody would
yeah.
see them, all of a sudden, you know what? I'm going to sign you to a 5 Comedy Central deal right now. It's like that's not going to happen. If it does happen, I'm happy for you, but just do it because you actually enjoy it. Just like you with the music,
Right.
me with doing the show now. And
That's it. You're doing it, and it's like, who cares, And you got on a stage, and it's like people would go sing karaoke. All right,
no,
they
yeah,
just for that one night they like doing it.
yeah,
Who cares if they suck or not? It's half the fun. But I agree with you 100%. I
yeah,
really do.
yeah. I wanted to say one more thing about bands because you mentioned earlier about people that show up for shows now, and either some other bands or their girlfriends. I love when there's a band I love getting up and getting into it still. My wife is very shy and she's like, "Oh my God, no, everybody's looking." You know how many times after the show is over, the band comes up to me, it's like, "Thank you so much. You're the only one that got into us, or you have no idea how much that means." I said, "No,
Yeah,
years ago, I was the guy in that stage, so I know exactly how much it means." So when nobody's getting into it, it's hard. Like I thrive on people's energy. So when I'm on stage and I see everybody going crazy, like that makes me want to play even harder.
yeah.
And so I definitely know. It's funny because with Sacred Oath, I'm not sure in the last time you saw them, they still give out the neck brace because for
Oh
the
no, I don't.
they've been doing this since the '80s. They give out a neck
Oh
brace
really?
to the nastiest headbanger.
The headbangers, yeah,
I won
yeah.
it. I don't know how many years in a row in the '80s, and then I didn't see them until about 2008. And I went to a show. I won the neck brace again, and they didn't.
Really?
They're giving it to me. They're like, "Rich, Rich," like they didn't even recognize me first. And
Are
then
you still gonna come up and headbang for us? Because no,
well, then I just
especially
won it
these
again.
days.
They played Crystal Bees last year, and they're like, "All right, here you go again, Rich. How many of these neck braces are you going to get?"
Wow, they play Crystal Bees. I know that place. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool.
that's actually we're talking about places to play. Some of the bands that you were in, I think, would be a good place. That and the Broadbrook Opera
Rob,
House.
well, I'm playing there with my Elvis band coming up May 18th.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, let's talk about them because it's called Bobby Sings the King.
Bobby Sings the King. Yep, Bobby Scandura. That's his name. And let me tell you something. This kind of happened out of nowhere too. The guitar player I play with, him and the bassist, we, as musicians, we've been playing together since the 80s, okay? On and off in various things. So I get a call from the guitarist, hey, we got this guy, he's an Elvis impersonator. Would you want to join an Elvis band? And basically, they actually warmed up for him in 1981, maybe in high school. He was a singer and he needed a band. And they weren't even at the same high school, but somebody told them about this band and they came and they learned a few Elvis songs and they played at this talent show and went crazy. All right. He hasn't done a thing since, other than he walks around acting and thinking he's Elvis. I mean, he really does, right? There's something weird here, but this guy has an aura about him. He's not trying to, he has
Yeah.
just a natural aura about him. And I mean, I'll get into that in a minute, but basically, he met up with us years later, about 2 years ago. And the conversation was to him was, hey, would you ever want to do something like that? He goes, I've never done any live shows. I've never been in a band. He's like, well, we got musicians. What if we could put something together? Would you be interested? He goes, see what you can do, and I'll come down, check it out. So he came down, a little rusty his first day, but I thought his voice was good. And next thing you know, we're rehearsing and we learned like 30 songs.
Wow.
And we've already done, I think, 3 shows together in the past year. And it's one of the most amazing things I've been a part of in some fashion because we haven't had a crowd of less than 400. We sold out. The first show was at Chicago Sam's in Cromwell. Sold it out in 4 hours. A lot of our family and friends buying tickets, buying tables, and all this. Then
Yeah.
we play at a place called the Hawthorne. It's like a dinner place, 400 seats, big wedding room, big stage we set up. Sold it out. And now we're at Broadbrook Opera House. That's actually the smallest one we played. It's only 250, and we
Yeah.
sold that one out. So we're selling out Elvis. And let me tell you, have you seen any of our Elvis videos?
No, well, actually, no. I
Oh,
sorry. I correct myself. I went on the Facebook page and I did see a video. So
good.
I like it.
Because
Yeah.
there's some really good video, and I'm telling you, the guy, he knows Elvis. I mean, he has a voice, and on top of it, he knows the moves, man. He studies every time we're at practice. Oh, and that's the movie. That's the way it is. When he does his part, he kicks his leg twice. I'm like, I ain't watching that movie 100 times like you are. I'm not going to memorize the video, but he like expects us to know things like his certain cues, and which is good because we know enough of them now where we're actually taking a show from a movie. The things he says are almost identical to what Elvis says. He really wants to make it a show where other Elvis tributes, they're not maybe good musically and stuff, but when they stop playing, the singer becomes who he normally is. He doesn't. This guy, you don't ever lose the aura of Elvis.
I
And
love it.
went out to a dinner the other night, a bar actually, all of us for our guitarist's birthday, and Elvis was with us. We call him Elvis. I never call him Bob. And he's out there, and I'm telling you, people talking all night long. There's crowds of people coming up to him, guys, girls, all around him. He cannot. And he walks in. He has the silk black and white shirt, and he's got the buckle on, and he's got the sunglasses. I mean, he looks for it. All right.
Yeah.
But he walks around. You watch it all night long. When he was leaving, these guys were outside messing around. They saw him like, "Oh, Elvis, we gotta get your autograph," and they were serious. Like, we love Elvis and all this stuff.
That's
So
funny.
it's because so think about it. I've been playing in metal bands since Fates. All right, other than maybe Motorhead, which was a pretty big show. These Elvis shows might be the biggest shows I've ever played in my life. 400 people, and they're beautiful facilities. Instead of playing these dives where you go in, you don't make any money. All right, there's not enough money because when you got 5 bands on the bill and only 10 people show up,
Yeah.
you're not making. I never even ask for money, even if there is. I just tell the guys, put it in the band fund. And the conditions, bringing in your equipment, and these shitty, stale beer places, coming home at 1 in the morning. Elvis, we go on at 8:15. It's an hour and a half show. We're done. And the money is fantastic, but more importantly, again, of the money, because again, I'm not about the money, is seeing 400 people in the crowd going nuts and loving the music, and it's in all the videos. You see these people going nuts, especially the women, and they're
Yeah.
going nuts, and it's real. It's happened at every show we've gone to. We're starting to realize what the show's about. So for what it's worth, I play a secondary guitar in that one, mostly rhythm stuff. But really, it's the vocals. Me and the girl, we both use harmonizers a lot in our singing. So we two people with harmonizers, we do all these big vocals that you hear on the Elvis songs. It sounds huge. It really does. I feel like even on stage, it's like it just has this presence when it comes out. And I feel like that's my important part in this band. It's not my guitar playing, it's singing, which I never thought was going to be my role here, but you just never know. But do whatever you do and do what you like doing and make sure it's fun. And playing the 400 people all the time and actually getting paid and being treated with respect.
Yes.
They kind of give you dinner. We go away, they're going to give us rooms. We all get our own room. It's like, you don't get
Wow.
that. You don't get that in bands, local metal bands. All right.
No,
It's
not at all.
so,
I used to get
sorry,
$50 in a case of beer.
I'm 60 years old and I don't mind being taken care of. I'm not looking for anything special. It's nice to play a nicer place and have some of the amenities that I don't think a lot of musicians even know exist out there.
Yeah. Well, now I'm kind of mad. I wish I knew about it earlier because I would love to see them at Broadbrook, but I guess you just told me it was sold out.
Well, I could get you a pair of tickets if you wanted to go. You let me know because I could I think I have to see if there's anything left. But the band had a few we were still holding on to. And if they didn't get rid of them, I can vouch for 2 of them, and I'll give you an email and I'll send them to you. But it's May 18th. It's a Saturday. Okay.
I don't see any issues with that day right now. So I would love to go. I'll say it right
Would
now.
you?
I would love to go. Thank you very
I'll
much.
send you I'll send you a pair, and bring your wife. You married, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yeah, bring your
Yeah.
wife, and come have a good time.
All
It's
right.
a cool place. Have you been to Broadbrook yet?
Yes. I love that place. I saw a band called Mystic Bowie. They're called Talking Dreads. I became friends with him after seeing him there because I had him on the
Yeah.
show. He used to be a part of. He was what's the band after Talking Heads? I can't remember the name of it, but with the
Oh,
drummer
the one
does
he was. Yeah.
Tina. They were in a band, but he was the singer of that band. And then what
I
happened
can't
was
think of the name of
yeah, neither can I. But they broke up. It was the band that formed after Talking
Yeah.
Heads broke up. He was the singer of that band, but then he's from Jamaica, so he asked for permission to sing Talking Head songs, but reggae style. It's great. So the first time I ever saw them was at that Broadbrook, and I've seen them. I just saw them in New York. I saw them
Yeah.
in New Hampshire. I saw them in Vermont. I had this woman come up to me who was selling shirts. She goes, "Can I ask a question? Where do you live?" I said, "Connecticut." She goes, I'm management here. I book all the shows and I see you everywhere. Thank you very much." I said, "No, I'm a huge fan of these guys." So yeah, I've been there several times to Broadbrook, and May 18th put me on the schedule.
All
Put me
right.
on the
I'll call the guys in the morning, and I'll
yeah.
see if there's anything left in the bank, and if there is, I'll grab you too.
I really do appreciate that. Now,
Have
the
a
name of
good
the band is called Submit Suspicious Minds. Is that correct?
Ooh.
The name of your band was Bobby Sings the King, but then I saw something about Suspicious Minds. Is that the
Band,
back?
that's what we called ourselves. Bobby and the Suspicious Minds.
That's it.
That's
Yeah.
basically we're the band, if you will. So yeah, it's a cool name.
Yeah.
But definitely I had all these videos up, and now that we got a promoter, they didn't want us to have so much out there. They want people to come see the show. So we cut it back, and we have like a highlight reel now that goes through about maybe 6, 7 songs, which is enough for people to see
Yeah.
stuff. But
That was the one I saw because when I was
I
doing
hope
my
you can
research
make
in the
it.
band.
I hope I can get you the ticket. I'll know by tomorrow. Okay. And
Okay.
I'll send you an email.
I appreciate that. Have you ever heard of John Beardsley?
I've heard the name.
The reason I'm saying that is because years ago, I want to say in the 80s, and I think he still does it. He just played in Bristol. He was an Elvis, or he is an Elvis impersonator. He still does it. I didn't even realize he still does it, but he's been doing it forever. And it's funny
Yep.
because I was in radio for a while, and his brother Chris was my program director. And I said, "Wait a minute," because John used to work with my mother at Sears, but he would do Elvis on the side. And at that time, he was one of the hugest in the area. And I think he just played
Yeah.
in Bristol too, because he's another Connecticut person.
Where do you play? Bleachers, maybe?
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a cool place.
yeah.
That's
No,
a cool
I
place.
love that place. There's a band called Completely Unchained, Van Halen tribute. I wanted to see them this week, but instead I bought tickets. Have you ever heard the Catherine Hepburn Center?
Oh, the Kate. I'm trying to get
That's
us into
Kate.
that show.
Yeah,
And I keep trying. I've been trying since last fall, and we just can't seem to get in there. And it doesn't make sense because we have a lot of fans who've been saying, "When are you going to play the Kate? It's a
yeah,
great place by the." We would sell that. It's only 200 plus people there. We
yeah.
have no problem. I've told the guy I can almost guarantee you a sellout.
Oh,
And not every band gets sellouts, but I just don't know why it's taking so long. He has another Elvis he's worked with, but he said to me, he's playing in December. I'd have to wait at least 6 months. I'm like, fine, that'll be summer. So now summer's here. We can't see him, still can't get in.
yeah. I'm
So
surprised by that because I saw Henry Rollins do a spoken word there, but I'm going to see a Yes tribute band.
Awaken?
Yes, going to see them
Yeah, I
this
saw
Saturday.
that. I saw that, man. That's gonna be a good show.
I cannot
That
wait.
should be a good show.
All
You know,
right.
I'm telling you, they got to be great musicians to be doing Yes, because Yes is some that was my pre-Rush days. I was a big Yes fan. Like
Yeah.
the first album I ever got really was obviously Fragile, but guy down the street had the live album. Was it Yes Songs? The
Yes.
triple, and that's what I got, and that's where I got to hear stuff from the first album, Close to the Edge. Blew me away. That album was like wow, and then I started buying all the studio records. But yeah, you're gonna enjoy that show, man, because there's so much great music. I can only of course they'll play all the hits,
Yeah.
but who knows how deep they'll go. I like a good deep track. I like to hear like Heart of the Sunrise is one of my all-time favorite. Yes songs. I just love that song. But what's the other one on there? Called South Side of the Sky.
Yeah, they have so many great songs. You know what's funny? I
Oh,
never saw it. I never saw it. Yes, technically, but years ago
oh
I
no.
saw Anderson, Bruford, Waitman, and Howe. That was the band I
Okay.
saw at the Civic Center, which
So
basically
who
was
you
Yes.
missing? Anderson. So you were missing Squire.
Yeah,
You were
that's it.
missing.
Chris White.
Right.
I had
That
and
was still
Bruford.
more than what Yes is out there now. So
Yeah.
you did a lot better. I saw them. I saw them twice, and the last time I saw them was the 35th anniversary at the Mohegan. Awesome show, and they came out. They did an acoustic set, and they
Wow.
did South Side of the Sky and Long Distance Runaround acoustically,
Love
which
that.
was so cool. If you ever get, there's a 35th anniversary CD set you can get. I think it's like 2 or 3 CDs in a box, and they actually recorded those same songs acoustically, which is why they probably played them live. But you got to hear them acoustically; they're pretty cool.
There's gonna be a lot of things I'm checking out after this interview. Thank you for
You
telling
like
me about all this.
Kansas? Are you a Kansas fan?
Yes, I love
Yeah.
Kansas. I saw them
Southern,
at the
Southern.
Sting.
Yeah, I was at that show, dude.
I
That goes back a way. That was, I don't think that was with Steve Walsh though. That was the other singer. But Kansas, man, I've been seeing them since first time I saw them was Point of No Return tour.
oh my God.
And that
Wow.
was their peak, Leftover Chair, Point of No Return, and the next album. Those songs they do, those early songs, I could listen to them all day. Another favorite band of mine
Oh yeah.
is Kansas. Right up there, man. It's top bands.
I always
Uh,
say there's some bands I can never ever get sick of, and every time I hear
nope,
"Carry On Wayward Son," "Point of No
nope,
Return," any of it, "Dust in the Wind," right? Turn it
yep,
up. I never
yep.
ever say, "Oh, I've heard this song
You
too many
never get
times."
sick of some bands, and that's one of the bands that have stuck with me after. Trust me, there's bands I thought were huge to me back then. I don't listen to really at all anymore. I don't listen to Maiden really at all anymore.
No.
Maybe I listen to them old stuff for a day in my car, but I can put Kansas on all the time. Like they're one of my go tos. Queen, one of
Yes.
my go tos. Always can put them in my car. Black Sabbath, uh, Deep Purple. It's always the old bands that are go-tos. The bands I follow later on, Judas Priest and stuff, love them. I just don't listen to them really much anymore. I gotten away from it. That was more of a period of my life where bands like Kansas, they became part of my culture. The Beatles, they're part of my culture,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'll listen to them anytime.
That's another one. And you know what? I'm so happy because I always wanted to see Paul McCartney. Well, I would love to see the Beatles, but we never had a chance to do that, obviously. But I would, out of all the Beatles, I said I always want to see Paul McCartney. So I saw him last year, the year before at Fenway Park. He just turned, what was it, 80 or 70, whatever, however he was. He was, and
Yep,
he was dancing around,
phenomenal.
telling jokes. He sang 35 songs that went over 3.5 hours. The guy's
Yep.
phenomenal. It just puts on. He's
I,
still at 80 years old or whoever old he puts on a
yeah,
phenomenal show.
Bruce Springsteen's pissed at him. He said, "Because of you, I got to do these long shows because you won't slow down." He goes, "So I got to try to keep up. People expect me to do it." I've seen McCartney about 5 times, and never has he done anything less than what you just said.
Yeah,
Always a 3 hour plus show. Voice sounds phenomenal. Band, great lighting. I saw him at Fenway. I've seen him at Shea,
yeah,
Giant Stadium. I've seen him at what's the other one? Foxborough.
yep,
Never disappoints. And he always switches up songs. And I hate to say it, being one of the biggest Beatle fans in the world, I think his voice has hit a wall about 2 years, 3 years ago.
yeah,
And it's sad because I don't want to ever see someone as great as Paul finish his career with that negativity. People are going to remember some of that, and it's on YouTube and this and that.
yeah,
Granted, with a band, they cover him a lot for him. But I hear it because I just know him too well. And I heard his last record, which I thought musically has some pretty interesting ideas. It just did not come across. His voice was always just as important to me as his music
yeah.
and how he sang things. So it's like that with any musician. I don't care who Ozzy, all these people. I had a thought the other day. I was listening to Dio, and I was listening to one of their last live shows from a concert up in England, and I could see the changes in his voice. It
Yeah.
still sounded strong, but I was starting to hear where I almost, and he was older. He was definitely like, what was he? How old was he when he died?
He was
Six,
definitely in
later
his
six,
60s. Yeah, definitely
later
late
six.
60s. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm like, I could almost see if he lived, he probably would, his voice could have become a problem. And for someone like a Dio, who's known for his voice, so all of a sudden people talking about, oh, it just doesn't sound, he never had to do that. You know, he got out of this world really, I think, on the cusp of that. And there are some singers that's happened to, or maybe we'll never know, you know, because they die young. But some bands, you love these people all your life, and then they come out. Deep Purple's another one. Ian Gillan, one of my all-time favorite singers. And I can't go see Purple anymore because I saw them about 5 years ago, and he just can't hit the notes. But
Uh,
so if he sings the lower stuff, it sounds like Ian Gillan. But to me, Purple was about the boldness of the vocals and all that. You can't do that no more. And the band was kind of a very flat sounding version. I mean, it was Smoke on the Water, it was
yeah.
Space Trucker, but it didn't have the loud dynamics like a band wailing on their instruments. They were, you know, it was just very well played, and you know, it had its moments, but I felt like this isn't the Deep Purple I grew up on. You know, I saw the Perfect Strangers tour. That
Ah,
was that was still, they still had it then, man. They came out and they killed that night. When he did Child in Time, it was, you got chills. He doesn't even sing
wow,
that song anymore. He hasn't sung it in years.
wow.
Yeah, so you know, I feel like some bands like McCartney, it's, we've watched them play, and Robert Plant, another one. You know, thank God Robert admits who he is, and he doesn't want to sing like that, nor can he. He says,
Yeah.
he goes, I like singing the way I sing to fit the music I'm into singing. You know, and I
Hmm.
respect that. You know, I think he done a good job of separating the two by leaving Zeppelin. If he was still in Led Zeppelin now and continuing like these bands, he would be taking slack probably for not hitting stuff. But because he gave that up way back when Bonham died, you know, or should I say after Page and Plant did their
Yeah.
so-called non-Zeppelin tour, although it was Zeppelin live, um, he would have taken more slack. So he's the one guy I think of that kind of managed it well. Where if you don't manage it and you keep trying, going out there pretending that you're, people start talking about you,
Yeah.
you know, and
When you brought up a great point too, because now with YouTube, I'll give you two examples where people are always going to think of this. One is David Lee Roth in Las Vegas. People are always going to remember. I mean, he never was the best singer. He was a great frontman, but he was an okay singer. And I love old Van Halen, but there's videos online where he's just completely horrible. That's all people are going to remember. And another one is Bon Jovi. There's like, maybe it was just a bad show, but his voice, he couldn't hit the notes. He's squeaking, and that's all anybody that talks like, oh my God, what happened to Bon Jovi, this and that. So like people like you said, like Paul McCartney, and it's funny because I interviewed a couple. They wrote a book because his band played with the Beatles back in the Cavern days. She went on a date with Paul McCartney and a date in George Harrison, and they had the largest Beatles museum. And she said exactly what you said. She goes, like I said, oh, he was phenomenal and this and that. She goes, no, about a couple years ago, he hit a wall, but the band covers for him. I said, you know what? I'm glad the band covers for him, but he still sounded great. And she goes, and she said what you said too. She goes, I've been a fan of them forever. I can tell. And I said, you know what? I
that
understand that.
bothers us. You know, it
Yeah,
does bother the people that it can tell
yeah,
because you're that close to the music. You're not, some people are there, oh wow, he's singing Yesterday. But I'm listening to Yesterday for the nuances that made the song beautiful as a musician. And
yeah,
so you hear things that are not quite right. And that's the thing. People like Bon Jovi, yeah, he went out and did that tour. He had no right, not right, but he shouldn't have done that tour because I would think in rehearsals he already knew he had a problem. All
yeah,
right. Paul Stanley of Kiss, one of my favorite rock singers. He's lost his voice about 4 years ago, and it's horrible. I mean, and it really is. The word horrible is the way to describe it. I went
yeah,
and saw their final concert just because it was their final.
N-
And when he would talk in between songs, he'd be like, you know, how y'all doing? In the old days, it was the coolest thing when he had his banter. He comes down like, ah! I'm like, what did he just say? I'm like, it really had this raspiness, and I'm
yeah.
telling you, my friend next to me didn't know what he said, and I actually watched the pay per view. It's in the pay per view. It's like, I guess you have commitments. You know, maybe his voice started going as the tour started, which was actually before COVID,
Yeah.
their final tour. So they had to finish things out, and they wanted to finish things out, and I think they just got through it because there's a real reason they're not going out anymore. Is Paul couldn't do another tour. If he had to go out another year from now, his voice is only going to be that much weaker. Apparently, he had some type of vocal surgery done and damaged
Oh,
the vocals, and it didn't turn out well. That's what I've heard. And that fucks you up, But he probably had to have the surgery because of a problem, so he didn't have much of a choice but to try it. But that's happened. It happened to someone else too that had surgery, and their voice was never quite. Bon Jovi, he was just talking about it. And I think there's a documentary about it where he's in the hospital and his voice and he didn't know he was ever going to sing again and all this shit. But
wow.
we'll have to see. But I think people know that tour is coming, and you see these bad videos, and you're like, I don't ever want to get to that point. I want to stop because I know this tour is going to be that video. I hear it. I listen to the tapes of our practice. When you've hit that wall, and I don't know why musicians feel they can go out and pretend like no one's gonna notice.
Yeah.
Even Ozzy goes out there now and he can't sing. He's always a half step behind the music and
Yeah.
he's off key, and he still wants to tour. I'm like, you don't owe us nothing. You've gone out and you've done the greatest shows, and why do you want to go out and kind of look like a haphazard Ozzy? What's your point? I
No,
mean, we're
it's-
not asking you to do that.
Yeah, no, I like that. Like what you said, go out while you're on top. And another example, more recent too, is Vince Neil. I mean, he did some practice shows, and before this,
Yeah,
and I don't know how many times they officially retired. They signed contracts saying we're never going to play together again. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
as soon as they offered him more money, all right, let's do it one more time. And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was another band that said, especially hearing Vince Neil and the video I saw, it's like, yeah, you should just stay home and
I
go.
heard those shows. Those were club shows he did, and there was nothing to help him there, and he sounded absolutely horrendous.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Motley Crue now, I've seen it. There's backing tracks when he's like doing stuff,
Uh,
girls, girls. He's singing with something on parts, and it's obviously to get through the show. But if you ever heard some of this stuff, I actually go back to Kiss for a second. I got something that I found on YouTube, and I saved it because it's not there anymore. Somebody had an actual recording of the track that Paul Stanley, when he's
yep.
on stage, he's listening to cues. It's a guy talking. Okay, here comes all right. 3, 2, 1. And Paul does his part, and you hear his recording of him singing.
Ah.
Yet it's a direct board recording. Okay, no effects, nothing. Not singing to nothing. It is so bad. It is so bad. It's like this guy has no right singing for Kiss. He doesn't sound like that way on stage because obviously it's colored up with the reverb, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe a backing track. I know they are. But when I heard the dry vocal, I'm like, that ain't Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
It's like, and he's kind of like almost couldn't get it out from air. He's like, do you feel right? He's like a whispering. It's like it's not even coming out right, and it's sound great in the audience. So why? Because there's tapes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's what's happening. First of all, the only reason bands are doing all this kind of stuff because there are no other bands behind them. You think about it. We're still living off the bands from the 70s and the 80s and the
Oh yeah.
90s. All right.
Mhm.
After that, bands got really thin as far as becoming big. Who really made it big after 2000? That's headlining now. Guns N' Roses, great, they're headlining. Some of these other bands, but other than that, it's all the 70s and 80 bands that were huge, still touring in their 70s because there are people who still love going to see that.
Yeah.
And guess who those people are? It ain't the young crowd anymore.
That's
It's the same people who saw them in the 70s and the 80s and the
yeah.
90s.
Yeah.
So as long as we're alive, that music will go on. But you watch, man, another 10 years, even our crowd, I'm 60 now. All right, 10 years, I'm going to be 70. I grew up with all that stuff. I was actually a little young for Deep Purple and Sabbath. I was on the cusp of them falling apart. Where are we going to be when even the crowd who goes and sees them is outgrowing them and the musicians are dying off? So we're kind of seeing the end of an era because it's going
Yeah.
to end faster than you think. Musicians are dying. They're all in their 70s now. Just, I'm sorry, but that's just the way life is. Most people, 70s, 80s is usually an age we lose people. So, and there's not anything after that, not in that quality. And then they have these things where Foghat goes out as Foghat, and the drummer's not even in the band anymore. He was the only original member, which to me is not the same thing.
Yep.
But he's gone. And Foreigner, not one member in the band now is a original member. Mick Jones has been long gone. That's what you're going to start seeing. Bands that go out calling themselves Foreigner. No, they're not. They're a freaking cover band. That's all you don't even tell me or anything else.
Yeah.
Because you're a cover band. You're a bunch of musicians playing songs by somebody, and you're really good at it. But you're not the band.
No,
So
I've always said that. Yeah, they're paying
so
$300 to see a cover band.
go to Broadbrook Opera House. You'll see Beyond Purple. Jimmy Bell does an amazing job. I'm going to that show actually.
Yeah.
And great. Does that mean they can go out and call themselves Deep Purple?
No.
No.
Well, actually, I had Jimmy Bill on the show, and I'm friends with him, and we were talking about that, and he said, he goes, I never ever want to be, he goes, I have the long hair, and he goes, even with Accept, he's not Accept, I'm sorry, Autograph, he's in an Autograph now, and the only original member that was in the band was the guitar player, and he's dead, so there's really no original members, and he goes, we know that, and we accept that, so we're still calling ourselves Autograph, but these, like you said, these other bands, where it's a cover band. But I know what you're talking about, Beyond Purple. I love that band. They play the best of Whitesnake, Dio, Rainbow.
Oh, I want to hear some of that. I've never seen them, so I'm looking forward to that show.
Oh,
and I'm being a fan of all that music. I know it's going to be a great night of music, and that's all I want when I go out. When I really go out now, give me something I can sink my teeth in. A Purple tribute band. Oh yeah, I'll go see that. You know,
they are phenomenal.
Yeah, I heard the singer's good, and I know Jimmy, so I'm sure they're going to be phenomenal. But honestly, the difference is the bands that are cover bands have a different name. If you're allowed to change your name to Deep Purple or Kiss or Led Zeppelin, you can go out and you can sell out arenas because I don't know if I should say this, but there are people in the world that okay, well it's Led Zeppelin, it must be okay, you know, and we're gonna go and you go see it and you have a great time because they don't even know it's the same singer, you know, they don't even know who Robert Plant is. I'm sorry, but and that's what the world's going to come to. You're going to have a world of tribute bands that are authorized to call themselves, you know, Kiss. And whoever's running that operation at any time can switch a member. There's no such thing as permanent members anymore. Yeah. You know, we the keyboardist is no longer with us. We got a new guy. Kansas is the same way. They only got a couple original members, but they're phenomenal. Go see Kansas. I've seen them with their new band. Reminds me of seeing Kansas in '77. They're that good.
Yeah.
Amazing. So anyway, that's my rant about cover bands.
Yeah.
Stuff.
No, I agree with that. And that's why a lot of times I like the bands like Beyond Purple, Completely Unchanged, which is Van Halen, because they're not the band, but they're the band in their prime. So I'm seeing like the band. And I'm paying a hell of a lot less money than I would to see the real band who's not the real band anymore. So you and I are completely
all you want to do is hear the songs now. You know, it's a nice thought to have the original musicians singing it because now it's like I'm hearing the song by the people. That's actually Ian Gillan singing. That's Richie Beck. That ain't gonna happen. And the fact of the matter is, you know, these bands. I say it again, but that's all it is a name. If I went and saw Beyond Purple, I can't wait to go see the show. Jimmy Bell. They're gonna do all these great songs. If they changed it, if that was going out as Deep Purple and there was the exact same show I'd be like, I'm not going to see that Purple band. It's just a cover. I couldn't do it because it's called Deep Purple. Yeah. But I can go in a second because it's Beyond Purple because I know they're going to do a great job. But I guess I'm just that way. I don't know what you want to call it. Go see a Beatles tribute. It ain't Beatles. But if I'm going to go see one, you want to go see a good Beatles, go see the Fab Four. They don't look anything like the Beatles. They're the only band I've ever seen. I don't go see tributes that look like Beatles anymore. I've gotten tired of the same old stick. They go from the Ed Sullivan show. I like going to see Fab Four because there's like 7 musicians on stage, and their job is to create the music live without any overdubs. They came out with Trumpet Player one time to do Yellow Submarine. I mean, and they sound like the Beatles, and they do all the weird guitar stuff. That's the kind of band I'd rather go see. And they don't call themselves the Beatles. I'd rather see a top-notch tribute act than a name brand with a tribute act playing underneath it. I don't know what it is. It's the same band maybe, but isn't it better if they're a tribute act? And then I I know what they understand. We may
Yeah.
be the best Van Halen tribute act in the world, but we're not calling ourselves Van Halen.
No, exactly. I completely understand it because they're not pretending that they're a real band. They're just huge fans and they do the best they can playing the music. And a lot of times they play the music like the way the band did in their prime. And I will say one more time, I already told you, but Beyond Purple, I've seen at least 4 times. They
Oh
play the
wow!
best of Deep Purple, Ronnie James Dio, Rainbow, Whitesnake. I mean, they play
Um,
everything and it's just
are you going to
nonstop.
go to the show at the Broadbrook?
What day is that again? Because I was looking into it.
It's a good question. It's coming up actually, but
Because I saw it on his Facebook page, and I said, "Oh, I got to go to that." It was one of those things. I'm so glad you reminded me because,
I think there's still some. Here it is, right here. It's the 13th of April.
okay, I'm glad you reminded me because I'm gonna buy myself a ticket for that tomorrow because
Oh,
I did.
I got some seats with friends, but I know there's general admission
Yeah.
still available, so you can get your foot in the door, and I'll probably go walk up front anyway when they start playing. You know.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll be right up there with you.
All
Like I
right.
said,
That'd
whenever
be
it's good music. I know we've been talking for about 2.5 hours, and I am enjoying this so much. Just talking about music in general. This is great. I have
I
a
didn't
couple.
realize how late it was until I looked a minute ago, and I'm like, we're just. I hope you're going to do some editing here.
I'll talk to my editor about this and see. But I'm enjoying this conversation here. So everything that we talked about is kept my interest. There's nothing that I.
Well, because we both love music, and I don't really talk. The only time I get to talk with music this way, in the
Yeah.
depth of it, is when I'm with certain other musicians, and I don't see a lot of people much. And when I'm at practice, yeah, I talk to people, but I don't have a world where I'm surrounded with people. So I live my private little world. My
Yeah.
studio that you can maybe see behind me is where I live, where all my music is, and I'm in this world. The guy that you're talking to, and I'm talking to you, we're in this world where we totally understand all this shit. We have reasons why we know all this facts and all this. And my wife downstairs has no interest in any of this stuff. But she likes that I like it, But
Yeah.
it's like I'm in this world, and I can come up here for a night, and I'm not talking to a soul, but I'm still thinking about this stuff. I'm checking stuff out, putting records on, and it's a great world to live in. I'm glad I became not just a musician, but I became someone who loved music in general. I don't know where it came from. I can. My father played guitar, so I'm sure that was some of it. I had an aunt who grew up in the '60s, and she was probably when I was born, like maybe 13. So by the time I went through the '60s, she was like, graduating high school in '67. She had all the records. And I'd go to my grandparents, and there'd be records all on the porch and in these cases. And she'd take me to her girlfriends. And I can still remember being on the floor with singles all over the place. And she turned me on to like the Beatles. She had the White Album. She had Meet the Beatles. She turned me on to Hendrix. She got into a lot of the psychedelic shit, the Doors and Jefferson Airplane. She was into so much cool music. So between me liking music, remember the Monkees?
Oh my God. Yeah.
That was probably the first band where every Monday I'd run up to my aunt's house and watch the Monkees because it was like watching a band. It was like that came out in '68, I think. So I was 5 years old.
Yep.
And I look at it and I had all the records already. My mother would buy me. So I was getting into music real young. And then across the street from me, my best friend to this date, we grew up from the time we were 5. And back and forth to each other's house listening to records. That's all we would do all day. You all had that one friend that you remember listening to records with. I'd buy one Purple record, he'd go out and get another one. I'd buy a Sabbath record. We were into our Sabbath kick. He wouldn't buy another one, and we couldn't wait to listen and talk music. And so my point is, you and I are talking now. It's a chance for me to talk with someone who I feel comfortable and understands things the same way, knows the thing for. So it's like I'm just rambling on here because there's so much in me that never gets to come out.
Yeah.
I don't get asked these questions by my wife. All right, that's not what she wants to know. So now I'm hearing this stuff, and it's like, yeah, let's talk about this stuff. I maybe do it once or twice a year with somebody. So
Yeah, well, you know what? You have carte blanche. You can every time you want to talk about music or anything, come back on the show. I'm sure we'll have many more things to talk about. It's funny because it's the opposite. My wife is upstairs, I'm downstairs, and it's the exact same thing. She never wants to talk about this. She loves that I love this, but she has zero interest in anything
yeah,
that I do with about music. She doesn't like any of the music. And
yeah,
for me, growing up, since we had a lot of neighborhood kids, we'd all get together and we'd form little bands and play music. But for me, if you lived in Connecticut, do you remember Phoenix Records and Brass City Records?
I remember Brass City. I don't remember Phoenix, but I remember
Okay.
Brass City. Yeah.
There was no, I used to go to those almost at least once a week and just go there for hours. And I would
Yeah.
just talk to everybody. And it was similar to what you said a couple hours ago in the interview where you're like, you look at the record cover, oh, that looks cool. So I would just go by that. And like, I found out so many new bands just from doing that, but also talking to other people. That was more of now it's like, if you like this, we recommend this on Netflix, whatever. Back
Yeah.
then it was, you had to get it from word to mouth. So somebody goes, oh, you
Yeah.
like that band? Try this. And then I would try that band. Then somebody would say, oh, wait, you like this band? I'll go turn you on to this band. So I did a lot of that back in my teenage years.
I think every band, I mean, think about it. Every band I can think about came from another influence, right? The Beatles came from my aunt. Kiss, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple all came from my friend John, who he got it from his sister, who was 3 years older. So everybody turned somebody on to something. Then I had a guitar player friend who's still around today. His name is Mark, and he was the guy when I started playing guitar with my drummer friend and my next door neighbor. When I talked about, he came in and, oh, we got this guy Mark, man. He likes Jimi Hendrix stuff. He's like Jimi Hendrix on guitar. Now we're all 13 years old, so we think he's great. But he comes down, and yeah, he was a little older, by about a year and a half older. So to him, he was the old dude. And he turned me on to Frank Marino. He turned me on to Robin Trower, Pat Trapp. I'm like, I never heard this band. I never heard, and even Hendrix. He knew all the deep tracks. I only knew the big hits.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you never heard Miss Peace in the Mississippi before? I'm like, no. He brings over the record. So there's always somebody in your life that brings you a new idea, a new genre, or a new something. It's so weird how that happens, and that's how music is. None of us figure out by ourselves. It's pieces coming in from somewhere else, and funny thing is, you can go back to a lot of old bands and think of the band and say, how did you hear about that band? We're all going to remember the story, how we first heard about whatever band I made mention. You're going to remember who either told you or where you heard it from. I tell my story of Ted Nugent. I never knew of him, but every morning my mother took me to work. I take control of her radio and I put on PLR or something like that. This is grammar school we're talking. I was 7th grade, I think, maybe 8th grade. Ted Nugent, they kept having an ad on every day for the Free for All album. It's like one of those little, and I just love what I heard. I didn't never heard it on the radio, but I loved the commercial. So I had to go. I went and found the record, and one of the times I went shopping with my mom. That was another thing. Anytime somebody went shopping, I went with them. When we got there, I'm going to the records, and they go do their thing. And then I always leave. Can I get this record? That's how I built my collection. So anyway, I went and found that album, became a huge Ted Nugent fan. I'm still one of his biggest fans. His style is very much, you wouldn't know it, but I know it. That's big part of my sound.
Yeah.
Nugent is in my sound somewhere, and I feel it everywhere I play. But it's too mixed in with other styles for someone to say, "Oh, you sound like Nugent." I don't sound like Nugent, but there's certain reflections and certain ways he did his notes and patterns or whatever. I just picked up from him, and so we remember our stories, man.
Oh yeah.
You
Well,
should write
for
a book
me,
about that. Put every A to Z band and have a story for every band A to Z, where you heard about it or some story about that. I bet you come up with something.
well, I can tell you, Ted Nugent for myself. I had a friend that lived up the street when I was a kid, and he had a keyboard, and he goes, "Rich, there's this great song." We started playing. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the Wango Z Tango. We
Yeah,
started
that was
going, na, 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 na. Come
that was
on,
like,
boys.
yep. That
Yep.
was, to me, that album was maybe kind of, he was going over his peak a little bit.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I felt like it was a big song for him, but I didn't follow it as much as, like, I like Free for All, the first album, Cat Scratch Fever,
Yes.
and the live album, one of the greatest live albums of all time, is Double Live Gonzo. That
Oh yeah.
album, you're at the show when you listen to that album. You're there. Just like Kiss Alive, you're there in the audience. You can feel it. That's a great live album, man.
Yeah.
And
What was that big thing? Sometimes if you don't want to do something, you can just turn around and get the fuck out of here.
yeah. He said something about that.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I used to know that shit. I'd walk around like repeating the shit he said on the live album all the time. But that was back in high school. I don't think I
Well,
could do it.
it's funny you said that because I used to know that, and that's why I just for some reason all I remember is the last part. If you don't like this, you turn around. I laughed and laughed when I was a kid, and I just used to repeat it all the time in school. So
Yeah, I think everybody did.
yeah, yeah.
It was just so funny to hear somebody say that, and he was so animated on stage.
Oh yeah.
He talked so fast. He knew what he wanted to say, and oh man, he controlled the audience. And that's how like Paul Stanley was on live. He controlled that audience, And I love frontmen like that came out and. But there were also a lot of people who tried to do that, and I didn't like their style. Something about them didn't work for me. So
Yeah.
but Nugent, man, he was the king live. Oh, man, was he good. I saw him in his prime, too. 76,
Oh
77.
wow.
I saw him when he was just phenomenal. All those early, and back in the day, you got to remember, you had the New Haven Coliseum,
Hmm.
you had the Hartford Civic Center, and you had the Springfield Civic Center.
Yes.
They would play sometimes all three of them on the same tour. They may do New Haven, then they come back, and the next thing they're in Springfield. Then at the end of the tour, they'll do Hartford or something, and you would get to see a band maybe like Rush, Kansas, Ted Nugent. Those were bands I can recall playing every tour. You'd see them 2, 3 times, and we went to every one of them. And I remember when Black Sabbath did the Black and Blue tour with Dio and stuff.
Yeah.
I saw that 3 times. I remember they did it in New Haven. Then they did it literally in a couple of days in Springfield.
Oh.
Then they went on tour. Then they came back and played Hartford, which is where you hear the Hartford, the big live. I don't know if you ever heard it, but the best known live Dio Sabbath show is from Hartford, Connecticut. And they finally released it as like bonus tracks on Mob Rules or Heaven and Hell album.
Oh no way.
But it was it was on the radio. That's why it's so good. They recorded it for the radio. It was on King Biscuit or something way back then. So to see bands in their prime, and you could go see Black Sabbath on the Heaven and Hell tour like 3 times.
Yeah.
It was just something we all got to do back then. And the opening, we were just talking about this the other night. The opening acts. You know how many great open? I saw Pat Travers, Frank Marino was a great opener. Sammy Hagar was a great opener. You saw bands that were opening for bands that were good, but maybe never made it big, or maybe later on they did. And we saw the openers were just as good.
Oh
We
yeah.
saw. I remember seeing the Good Rats opening for Rush.
Oh my God.
And I thought they were phenomenal back then. That was like on Hemispheres. That goes way back. But yeah, the opening bands were just as hot. You'd pay to go see some of these opening bands now play for a big, and then, you get in for a ticket, $7.50 a ticket. You know,
Oh, I know. I remember, like in the late '80s, tickets were $15 and went up to 20. I said, "Oh, come on, what a ripoff! I would
oh my,
love for it to be $20 now." Thinking like that was too much for me
uh,
to spend at 17 years old.
I remember. I still got a lot of my old ticket stubs, believe it or not, from like the 70s and 80s, definitely in the 80s, but even the 70s. I got tour books,
Yeah,
my
oh yeah.
Kansas tour book. I got the Firm. I got both Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell tour
Wow.
books. I got Diary of a Madman. All that early stuff and stuff. One of my other stories, thinking of Ozzy, I met Ozzy once before. I was he was just after Randy died. I'm talking like he took like a few days, a week off maybe. Then he
Yep.
started doing a couple dates with the first guitar player was Bernie Torme.
Yep.
And I saw the last show with Bernie Torme. He only did like 3 shows, and then he
Wow.
just couldn't do it. It was too much, too much too fast. And so anyway, Ozzy comes into Hartford for the show because it was postponed, and he's on WHCN. Now I'm in Plainville, and I just got back from lunch, and we're just parking the car, and I hear Ozzy's going to be on the radio very shortly. Fucking didn't even go back into work. I'm like, guys, bye. I had an Ozzy T-shirt on from when I saw him in '81, Blizzard of Oz tour. Got in my car, which here's the weirder part. I had one of his albums in my car. Don't even ask me why. But there, I got there. I raced up 84. I could hear him on the radio. I get there. He's just walking out the door to leave, and I'm just standing there. And me and one other kid were there, and a couple HCN people. And I just said, "Hey, Ozzy, can I get an autograph?" And he's like, "Sure." So I got a picture of him. It was, remember, I don't know, you probably, I don't know, what's your age?
55.
55. There used to be something called the WHCN Street Sheet. It was like a pamphlet.
Oh
And
yeah,
always had shows coming up where they had put a picture of somebody took of Ozzy signing my record for me. And
that's
I'm talking
funny.
to him and stuff. And he has his pen in his mouth. And somebody said something like Ozzy biting the head off a pen. That's what it said. It was like, I gave him the pen and it didn't write. Like I see the O on my album and then it died. Luckily, he put it in his mouth. He asked someone, anybody got a pen or something, and somebody gave him a marker, and he finished it and he redid it. And I still got that record.
Wow.
And so I got to ask him a couple of questions while he's writing and everything. I said, I know a lot of people don't talk about this album. I said, but I love Never Say Die. I said, your vocals on Air Dance are some of my favorite vocals. He looked at me, he goes, I don't think anybody ever talked about that song to me before. I go, it's just a beautiful song.
I
And
love
part
that
the
song.
funny thing is, some of the vocals, there's a melody he uses in that song. He ended up stealing it and using it in a song he sang on a Bill Ward solo record years ago. And I always picked up on it. But I always said that song was just something special about, if you ever listen to that song, and it's got all these cool keyboards. Don Airey plays keyboards. Remember
Yep.
Don Airey?
Oh yeah.
He actually plays keys on that. And there's this great solo in the middle. It's a very jazzy. It's a very jazzy, fast, like kind of, and the guitar is following the keyboards note for note. And I'm like, one of Tony's, I think, best guitar things. So unrecognized because nobody likes that album. Nobody talks about it. And probably that song threw people anyway, because it really isn't a Sabbathy sounding song. But I hate when people say Sabbathy because Sabbath never was what people envisioned all Sabbath to be like.
Hmm.
They have their heavy shit, but they have stuff that's totally different. That's just as great. Am I Going Insane? I love that song. Who Are You? Changes. You get to the later albums, songs like She's Gone, Technical Ecstasy, and this song. They had other sides to them, you know. Sabbath Plays Sabbath had other sides to it, but people just think of Sabbath as heavy, you know,
Yeah.
and it's sad because Sabbath was more than that, you know, and Sabbath was a band that just happened to play heavy riffs, but there was a lot of melody in their songs, and Ozzy was the melody. His vocal lines and stuff, you know, I hate when people say Ozzy wasn't a great singer. He was a phenomenal singer.
Yeah.
Knew how to use his voice. I get chills listening to Ozzy to this day. I may not follow his, I like actually his last couple solo records. They did a good job making them good on them. But for the most part, you want to ask me, even his early solo records, I would take Sabbath any day because the music's phenomenal, and they're just creating music for the fun of creating it. And man, did Ozzy do some great stuff in that day. Like I could
What's
talk Sabbath all night.
Well, it's funny you said it because my brother used to always laugh at me. I used to go around saying like, "No, I'll never say it." He goes, "Why do you like that song so much?" I said, "This is my favorite Ozzy Sabbath song. I just love that song." And he used to always
Yeah,
laugh at me. I said, "Just there's something about that song," and it's funny that
yeah.
you brought that up. And it's fun. Like they're another band, just like Van Halen, going from David Lee Roth to Sammy Hagar. When they went with Ryan James Dio, I thought probably most people thought they would never succeed, but I love the Dio years just as much. I love the Heaven and Hell. I love
Yeah,
Mob
yeah.
Rules. Dio brought Dio. What I like about Dio, he wasn't trying to be Ozzy. Dio
No,
was Dio, and that's what was so great
but,
about
but before it came, when the announcement was made, there was, you know, we knew that Dio was on with the band. It was, I probably read it in Circus Magazine or something. And you know, Ronnie James Dio has joined Black Sabbath for their next record. So, like any band, you get rid of Ozzy or any great singer you have. How sacrilege could somebody come in a band like you could only hear Ozzy? However, being a huge fan of Rainbow at the time, all
it.
right,
Yes.
had all the Rainbow stuff. I knew Dio very well, and I loved Dio. So I didn't know what was going. I like, how do you put these two together? What's going to be made? And nobody I think knew, you know. And I remember me and my buddy, we just left school. We're driving down again. I remember my spot in Bristol, and we hear the beginning of we hear Heaven and Hell. Knew right away it was Sabbath. Right away, we pulled into this parking lot of this convenience store just to listen to it. And right then and there, I heard the Sabbath tone and feel, but I heard, and it was like a marriage. It was like, this works. You just
Hmm.
knew that this works. And it was not Sabbath being Ozzy, because Ozzy had his own style. But Tony I could see Ozzy singing Heaven and Hell, but it wouldn't
Yeah.
have sounded like Dio. But
No.
that music, Ozzy could have put his own thing to it. It would have been something totally different. But it worked, and very rarely does that work. I mean, how many bands can you think of that are that big who replace a singer? And AC/DC was the other one that always comes to mind. Great singer, bigger career, if anything, with Brian Johnson, but they made their name for themselves, which helped them. If Highway to Hell didn't come out and he died, it would have been a different story, maybe. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that put them on the map. But how many bands can you think of from that day, the classic era, lost one of the greatest singers to only be replaced by another great singer and have another successful career doing it? It's not going to happen often. So, God bless Dio for coming aboard and saving Sabbath, and giving us some great music, because that really, Sabbath, I was into Sabbath well before they broke up. So I saw him on the '78 tour with Ozzy and
Wow.
Van Halen warmed up for them at New Haven.
Mhm.
I was floor fucking seats right up front.
Wow. You saw
And
some great concerts.
oh, that was maybe one of my top just because of the thought of it. Van Halen's playing their first album as a whole,
Yeah.
and Sabbath's on their Never Say Die tour, playing great classics, Electric Funeral, all these great songs. And people, the stories you'll hear it. Oh, Van Halen blew Sabbath away. No, they didn't. Van Halen blew everybody away because they were great. There's no taking. It was like the first album being played through a million loudspeakers on 11. It was so loud and powerful with the guitars, and they were a hot, young, um, hungry band. You felt it, you saw it. When he did Atomic Punk, the beginning scratching, I felt like my hair was like static electricity. It was like I was but and so people look at that as, oh, Sabbath was an old band. Sabbath wasn't old. They were in the early 30s, number one. Number two, they came out and they played Black Sabbath the way Black Sabbath plays Black Sabbath. They
Mhm.
weren't trying to play a mod. I've heard all the tour tapes. It's Sabbath sounded like they did in 75 and 73. Heavy as ever. Iommi sounded as great as ever. And Ozzy was great on that tour. There's
Yeah.
a video called Never Say Die. You ever see the video? It's a concert, not the whole concert, but it's a good portion of the concert.
Yeah.
He was in his prime. Anybody who wanted a Sabbath reunion all these years, that was, but people say, oh, they were no good that night. And they were, I don't buy it. I was at the show. They
Yeah.
sounded like Sabbath and they were phenomenal. It's just people weren't into Sabbath anymore. They stopped getting into Sabbath around 75, 70s, early 76. The music changed in the world, 76, 77. Look at the music that started coming out.
Oh yeah, the
It
Bee
changed.
Gees and
Yeah, it just changed. And rock music was kind of falling back. Deep Purple was in the back now. All these great 70 bands were just dying out. Doesn't mean they weren't good anymore.
yeah,
Just people weren't enjoying them like they were.
yeah,
All of a sudden, 20 years later, 99, Sabbath gets back together for the greatest reunion, and people are going nuts. It's like now it's the greatest thing in the world. But I remember it, and I don't like when people say. I will say both bands were phenomenal.
yeah,
You saw Sabbath and Van Halen in your prime. That's why that show was the greatest show
yeah.
ever, man. Might be my top show because of that reason.
I
You
think
can't.
another big reason for that too is David Lee Roth used to always say that, oh, they kicked us off the tours. We were blowing them off stage every night. And so people just, without even seeing Sabbath, hear that story like, oh, I heard Sabbath sucked without even knowing the facts. So you were actually at the show. You know they were good. You know they were still in their prime.
And
But
I don't
people,
believe that story either because Tony Iommi and from what I heard, the bands, I've seen the pictures and I've heard the stories. They partied a lot together.
yeah,
They enjoyed each other. Tony Iommi, years later, still great friends with Eddie. I've seen pictures of him in later years. I don't buy they kicked them. I think the tour ended and that was it. I
yeah,
mean, they did the whole tour as far as I know. And maybe when they went to England, they didn't bring them aboard with them or something. But uh, yeah, it was a show of all shows. Do you want to talk about two great bands? And that's what I talk about, opening bands. Well, Van Halen was the greatest opening band I ever saw in my life
wow,
because they became who they became and they knew it. Their album was out maybe I saw them in September and I think the album just came out maybe a month earlier because my friend at school was playing it for me after school, so I already had the album. But oh man, I can still remember it. Like, do you remember shows? You think go back to a show, you have a memory of something, where you were, how they looked, and how they sounded, and that show was that's historic. That show, man. Anybody who saw that show saw one of the best shows ever.
Yep.
So,
Well, you also being friends with Jimmy Bell, I'm sure you know the story between him and Sabbath, right? Or him and
oh yeah,
Ozzy. Yeah.
oh yeah,
And that's why I
it,
love the fact that
that
Dio
close.
actually, yeah, and this close, and he wrote the song that was on Dehumanizer, and Dio put it in his book saying, there's this guy named Jimmy Bell. Geezer wrote most of the songs except for this one guy, Jimmy Bell, and I don't know why they didn't give him credit. And it's just
Yep.
like Jimmy Bell's another one that always came so close, and then something happened. We,
That was his moment there.
yeah,
He'll tell you that because he pretty much had the gig and at the last minute lost it. He pretty much had it.
yeah,
From what I heard. So but that's life, man. We've
yeah.
all had a story of something that's taken away from us when you thought it was there. I could part of life.
Oh yeah, no.
Move
Well,
on.
he's not. Well, he's another
Wasn't meant to
one
be.
that does not complain about it. He just moves on and he does bigger and better things. He just always, no matter what happens to him, he brushes it off and goes back up. We talked about that a little while ago. It's like some people just whine and complain about it. I have never seen him in a bad mood. I've never seen him be mean to
Uh,
anybody. So he's just one
Oh,
of the
Jimmy's one
nicest.
of the nicest guys out there.
Yeah,
He's a really nice guy. I used to play with him way back when I not play with him, but my band played gigs with his band
join
many
forces.
times back in the
Gora,
late '80s when he was with
join forces.
Joint Forces, Bell Attack,
Oh, I forgot about them. Yeah,
few bands, whatever the band of the week was. But I don't know if you what from the era, if you remember a band, Sinus Galley. That was my band I played with in the late '80s, early '90s, and we were doing original music, but we did some covers, and we would open up for Jimmy all the time when they played at Bridges or up in Springfield or Toads and whatever, and it was just we had a relationship based on we'd see each other at the gigs and stuff, but
yeah.
it was cool. And now I see Jimmy, him and I use the same guitar tech, and I bump into him once in a while. I'll be going in, he's coming out or something. I was at the Elvis show. I went and saw an Elvis tribute guy at the Mohegan, and we were right up front. We got front seats, and I'm sitting there. Who's in the second row right behind me? Jimmy Bell talking to everybody. So I had to go talk to him there. He's just Jimmy's Jimmy, man.
Oh yeah,
He's
no.
in fact his cousin works with our Elvis band. Dave Bell is his cousin who works for he's worked for Fender and Paul. Now he's with Paul Reed Smith, and he works with us. He's like a good friend of our guitar player, but he knows all of us, and he comes to shows. He helps us with lights. He's just part of the entourage, if not,
Yeah.
nice guy too.
Yeah.
Nice
No,
guy
well,
too.
it's funny because he's similar to you and I. He goes, man, I'd love to come back on your show and just talk about music. This has been so much fun because we talked about
Yeah.
his whole career and everything. Then we just basically went off the path like you and I are doing right now, and we loved it. We're just talking about music and had a great time. I said, come back
You don't get
anytime.
to do it. You don't get to do it all the
Yeah.
time. It's not as easy as you think to have a deep conversation and go into all the stories. First of all, you need a couple hours to do it.
As we found out.
I could talk so much more. This is a story upon story, but we've
Yeah.
talked about quite a bit tonight, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. I really, really have.
Yeah,
So,
you and me and you both, and I really do appreciate you coming on the show.
my pleasure.
I want to go back to Fates Warning for a little bit because I'm not sure if you were in the band at this time. Did you work with Paul O'Neill? There's a reason I'm bringing him up. Was that
I
after
never
you?
worked. No, I never. I think I heard something afterwards in the book, maybe
Yeah,
where it said about something about them doing a Christmas thing.
that's
At, I've heard about it from the book, but I didn't know anything about it. So I do not know Paul O'Neill. But my sabotage stories, we were in New York. We were in California doing Spectre, and one of our nights out, we go see bands, and they were playing at a small club, Sabotage, back in the day.
yeah,
This was when I'm not even sure Power of the Night was out yet. That might have been the album that they were touring for. And we got front row seats on a small club, and I got to see Sabotage do everything. Dungeons Are Calling album,
wow.
Sirens. Those are my favorite albums. I never followed them after Power of the Night. I know a lot of people love all that other stuff. I just something about those Dungeons is my favorite.
Yeah.
That song is absolute. I could turn that up to 11 anytime I hear that song. You got it, man. Yeah, how do you not? You know, it's just that riff, dan, 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 dan. It's just so freaking heavy, man.
Yep.
Great freaking band. And I got some wicked front row pictures of the band, including Chris Olivia. And you got to see some of these pictures I got. You know, I post them sometimes when his anniversary of his death. They post it, and I'll always put it up or something. Great. He's like going like this to my camera with the guitar, like that. It's like a really cool picture.
I
So
got
if I find it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
Some of
please.
these
I would
things
I
we
would
talked
love to
about,
see that.
yeah, some of these things we're talking about, I'll think about them later. I'm like, oh yeah, if I see it, I'll think of you and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please. I would love to see that. And for people who don't know, Paul Neal ended up becoming the manager of Sabotage, and the guitar player turned it into Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So I guess back after you were gone, he was speaking with Fates Warning about, oh man, I got this great idea for a Christmas show and this and that. And Fates Warning was basically like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they laughed it off. Years later, Trans-Siberian Orchestra becomes one of the biggest things around.
Yeah, that was Jim. Jim should have jumped on that one because, in all honesty, I mean, it could have been a side project. I don't know how you would have shown it, but at the time with the band they had, they could have pulled that off. How about I think other musicians too, but they could have been the primary band where actually it became something else, you know. But yeah, well, again,
Yep.
opportunity. You never
Exactly.
know about the things you never get, you know, and
Yep.
because you didn't get them, and that's just the way it is.
Yep. And there's another time recording Spectre, and this would have been so cool because I'm a huge fan of Slayer. Slayer was recording the beginning parts or opening parts for Hell Awaits, and you got a chance to talk with Tom Murray and Jeff Hanneman. That must have
Yeah.
been great.
They weren't recording it. They were in the studio. What they wanted to do was take just when you listen to the album, the beginning, there's that
Yeah.
intro.
Like Say
They
Naj,
wanted
Say Naj, join us.
So they were doing a mix that was just taking out vocals or doing something, a special mix that they were going to use for their live shows. Because Hell Awaits was already out already, and they were just coming in to get something or pick something up because Bill Matoyer maybe did a special mix just as a live intro, you know, maybe like an extended version of it. And they walked in, they partied with us in the studio. We hung out with them for a couple hours, man, you know, doing some one hitters and doing some beer. I got pictures of it somewhere. I got some pictures of both of them in the studio, which is very cool. We partied with Armored State. They came in the studio
Yeah.
and Joey was there. Jeff was in there with us.
Wow.
And I think the other one might have been Gonzo. I'm not sure. I think it was two or three of them were there. But yeah, we have pictures of them partying with us and in this right in the studio. I just can't. I went to go find them for the book and I couldn't find them. And I
Wow.
know they're here somewhere, but I've looked and looked. So something I got to find. I got some negatives laying around that might be on one of the negatives. So we'll see.
Well, if you ever find those two, send it to my Facebook. I would love to see those too.
Oh yeah, I got some good pictures. I got one of Tom from Slayer, man, doing a one hitter and stuff. I caught him doing it. He looks like he's totally into it, and it was fun. You know, those are fun memories to hang out with people that were your idols. But again, they were our idols, but they were really the only difference was Slayer was getting a big name for themselves already.
Yeah.
But really, we were on this Show No Mercy, Hell Awaits, Night on Brocken, Spectre Within. Our albums were coming out just around the same time, so neither one of us, I think, looked at each other at that time as being anything huge. I mean, we had probably a little more of a sight on Slayer than they did on us, but we're all on Metal Blade. You get to know all the bands. You feel like if I walked into a bar and saw somebody from Trouble, which I have actually, and I, tell them who I'm with, and I was on Metal Blade. It's like you're part of that family. We all came up together, and we were all following each other. What's Trouble's next record coming out?
Yeah.
When's Armored Saint coming out? We're all following each other, and they did the same thing. So it was good times. That's what I liked about that. You could do that. Now there's just too many bands out there.
Oh yeah. No. What's funny about that too is you mentioned Joey Vera was there, and also Mark Zonder was there. So two people that ended up being future members
Yep.
of Fates Warning were there. And
Yep. Mark was there during the initial recordings, which I would call more of the drum tracks, and I'm not even sure if we kept the rhythm. We might have kept the rhythm tracks we did because I remember being in a booth and what I recorded was kept. But we did like, and he came in and helped set up Steve's drums to help get the sounds and stuff like that, or whatever he did. I don't recall any ever coming into the mixing part for some reason. He could have, but I pretty much, it was like two different studios. And the first studio was more of the recording the basic tracks. Then we went into the other one to start doing solos, vocals, stuff like that, fixing parts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But man, that was a fun time. Oh my God, that they were in there for, can you believe that? A month. They send you to California for a month and pay for your stay and your recording.
Wow.
You ain't getting that now.
No, not at
You're
all.
lucky if they'll
Never.
pay for the album cover. You're lucky if they'll pay for the artwork. You might get that out of them now, maybe. But basically, as you present them with the tapes now, maybe the artwork, which I have with Entierro, and then the label, if you have a label, or you just put it out yourselves. I mean, it's just the world we live in is a different music place. I'm glad I'm not a musician per se as I was in my 20s today. I don't think it would, and I feel bad because musicians don't have that scene around them anymore. I mean, there were bands playing every night. Which one do I go to?
Oh yeah.
And musicians galore. I mean, there was lots of local bands playing out and all the new music coming out and hearing it on the radio and what's the new record. It was all part of the world you lived in. There's no radio anymore. They're playing the songs from the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Exactly.
And there's no new music coming out from our genre. Yeah, if you got Sirius radio, you can go to one of these stations, and even then, they're playing all the big rock metal hits. You don't really hear too much new stuff. So
No.
it's getting cut. Being cut out from under them, and that's why it's such a small niche right now. And I just don't know how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
I really don't, because what's feeding it? You have diehard underground people. There are the crowd. There are undergrounders, but that's a fraction of the world that used to sell music and make music big. So yeah, maybe there'll always be underground music, but unless you're active in it, you're not going to know about it. And that's what happened to me back when I got back. I'll go back to when that guy told me about all these bands. I wasn't into metal for the longest time. I didn't know what was out there. I didn't think there was anything out there until I got into the underground world and heard of Argus, Beelzebub, While Heaven Wept, and all these other bands. And I'm like, I never heard of that band. And trust me, if they sucked, I wouldn't have listened to them. But certain bands hit me. I'm like, this is phenomenal. And it showed me that. But now, honestly, I haven't been into it lately anymore. I kind of got out of it again. Maybe it's because I'm an active musician, so I'm into my music. I don't go listening to any metal on radio anymore. I don't go listening to it in my house hardly anymore. I have to be in the mood. I'm in my car and I'm just going through my files. I'll see Maiden. I'm like, yeah, I want to hear Killers, man. I put that on, get my one listen, and I'm done. I'm in a Sabbath kick today. I'll put it on, but I don't follow the new, especially the underground new bands like I did 10 years ago. I kind of got out of it again. I don't know if I'll get back into it again now. I'm kind of felt like I found it. I know it's there and I see it, but I don't listen to it every day. I don't know about you, but it's just stuff we used to do in our younger days doesn't appeal to you as much. Yet it holds a place in your heart. It's still there.
No,
right?
That's funny that you said that because I just had this conversation with somebody else and somebody said, "It's the last time you listened to a new band about 94, 95?" I said, "Unfortunately, yes. I mean, all those bands from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then the 90s, I just said, I got bored with music. And as you said, there's a lot of great underground music that I don't even know about. And luckily, and I know I'm missing out on something, but I guess, I mean, giving up is maybe the wrong term, but I just didn't really care anymore. I love all the stuff I had before, and I listened to it. Like you said, I'll put on Abigail. I'll put on some Merciful Fate. Don't Break the Oath. I'll put on some old Maiden. As you said, I love Killers. And then, but no, I don't really care. Like I don't even know New Maiden at all. Maiden was one of my favorite groups. I love Peace of Mind. I love the Power Slave. I love Killers. I loved Number of the Beast. And then after, I just got bored with them. And I know
that's the other thing. They're putting out new music. And we're not even really, I'm not saying it's bad. I've heard it. It's just, I played it once and that was it. But I played Killers 10 times since, it's like, and you know what? Think about it. When those albums came out, we probably weren't married. Well, I was always married, but it doesn't matter. But a lot of us were single, young, when music was a cool thing. You went out with your friends. you listen to records at night, and it was because it was all around you, as we said. It was on the radio, it was in the magazines, it was everywhere. So it became a part of our life. That's why I'm saying kids today don't have that.
Yeah.
So when they get to be our age, they don't even I don't even know what they're going to be saying they like. When I was young, these were the bands I used to listen to. Because if they're kids that are 18 now, 20 years old, getting into music like we did, what are they listening to? They're listening to the same shit we did. They're into Deep Purple. They're not listening to new music
Yeah.
because I don't know of any new great metal bands out there. If
No.
you're into rock and metal, there's nothing. There are some out there, but I can't say I'm a fan. You know who I actually like, and you're gonna probably laugh at this. One of the few bands, there's a few maybe I like that are newer. I like Greta Van Fleet. Now I know they're a total Zeppelin sound and
Okay.
style,
Yeah.
but the fact is the songs are their own songs that just have that same sound. The guitar player is phenomenal. If you like Jimmy Page stuff, he's really got his own thing going, but it's definitely borrowed from Zeppelin, but he
Yeah.
takes it right. It's like me loving Iommi. And if I write heavy songs, I know my riffs came from Iommi. People may sound, oh, that's a little Sabbath sounding, but it's my own stuff. And the singer's got a very high voice. Sometimes I can see where people say it gets a little annoying or it's a little, I kind of dig it. I think he's in control and he's really passionate. And I listen to them and I'm like, that's one band that actually kind of came out of nowhere and is a band that's now on their fourth album and they're playing like the Bridgeport Theater and
Oh, I
outdoor,
love that place. Yeah.
and they're one of those few bands that A made it in the last few years, and B, I actually like. And there's not much of that.
I'm gonna check
There's
out
just
more of
not.
them. I know of them, and I've probably heard a song or two, but I'm going to check out more of them now because you and I have very, very similar tastes. The more we talk, and I know that I would like it because the way you described it, I know I would like probably. So I'm going to give it more of a chance.
And the last couple albums, I really call them albums because you listen to it and each song is a little different. It flows like the way an album. They're not trying to put 10 hits on the record. I
Yeah,
think there was one song they released as a single, but nothing comes across as overly poppy. But there's some songs that are deeper. You could tell they're slower, they're majestic, they got different feels. They really are writing records the way records used to be made.
yeah,
And the last two, especially, I thought were phenomenal. So, yeah, check it out. Put it on and it's a good car ride. In your
yeah.
car, you're listening, you got to go somewhere, you're driving for an hour. Pop that one in the car and give it a good listen and give each song a listen because you'll start to see as it grows on you. So,
You know, well, so I interviewed Andrew Hagar. He's Sammy Hagar's son. He's a musician as well, and he
oh,
was saying that all the platforms like Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, they want him to release one single or one song a month. So people, because it's more of an ADD nation now, so they said,
yeah.
well, and he said, I miss the days. I would love to just release a full album, take a year and a half off, go on tour, live life a little, learn some more, become a better songwriter, then come back and write a new album. Because instead, now they want me to do one song, and then a couple months another song, and then another song. He goes, it's not. And he said the same thing. It's not the same. I love the days of the
Nope.
deep tracks, and the album sort of flow, and there'd be a rhyme and reason to it. I mean, especially an example would be for metal, King Diamond. I love
Yeah.
the Abigail album, like how it's a whole story, and even
Yeah.
them
It
all.
flows musically.
Yeah,
What
exactly.
each song goes into the other really nicely, and
Yeah,
that's a great freaking album. Abigail's phenomenal.
yeah.
It's just one of his all time. I'm dying to hear the new record he's doing. Both him and Merciful Fate. I think they're going to come out with two phenomenal albums. I really do.
I
I
love
mean, he
after. I
hasn't
mean,
done a King Diamond album in years, and you know what? And some of their records came out where it wasn't as fashionable. All of a sudden, King Diamond and Merciful Fate they become really big again. They were doing Merciful Fate were doing bigger shows on their last reunion than they ever did when they were together.
yep.
And that's what I'm saying. The productions that are out there, I think you're going to hear two phenomenally great written albums, and they're going to do well. So I'm kind of excited about that because that's some new things to be looking forward to. But again, we're dealing with old bands putting out new music.
Yeah.
That's why I put my music out. I say, who the hell really gives a shit? Because I'm a former guitar player of a pretty big band that I was only on two records, and like, so what am I? I'm writing music in a world and writing style of music that's definitely not really common these days. I'm like, why is anybody even back to what I told you though? I'm doing it for me.
Yep.
I
And
really don't care.
people like me are still out there and we love it. So I'm glad
Right.
you're doing that. And when you think, and I'm not saying you're the one that thinks it, but when people think that, like, what am I doing this for? What, nobody's listening. There's people out there like me that love it. And just like you on the other end, there's other bands that are probably thinking the same thing. And you're like, I love this. This is great.
Oh
So
yeah.
you never know.
Oh, you want to know one of my favorite new bands? They're called Witch Hazel, Wytch Hazel. They're from England. Oh my God, I can't get enough of them. They got 3 records out now. Very Thin Lizzy sounding. They got
Wow.
that really nice sounding, clean but crunchy guitar. A lot of the harmonies, but the music's a little different, and it's kind of rocking but heavy. And I dig the singer. They do these slow songs. I get so moved by their slow stuff. They're a totally Christian band. All right, everything they write and sing about is about Christ, which is fine because I'm Christian, but my point is, you're listening to music, not thinking about that. So it's like you're not into their Christian band. You wouldn't even think of it unless I told you, because the music and the songs are true, and they're becoming pretty big now. They're playing some big festivals. But man, that's a band you want to check out,
All
Witch
right.
Hazel. Right?
Add that to
After
the
we
list.
talk, if I have some thoughts we talked about, I'll send you some names of stuff just to check out, or maybe even a link if I can find a link to something to check out. All right.
Oh, please, because I'm as we're talking, I'm trying to remember all these different bands. I said, all right, gotta
Oh,
check that out, gotta
I've
check this out.
one of my weird things, but I'll remember this kind of stuff. I'm like, what bands did we talk about? If you wanted to check out, oh yeah, this band, I know them right off my head. So I'll
Did
get
you
them.
ever have a chance to either play with King Diamond or just meet him?
No, never got to meet King Diamond. That never happened. I wish I could have saw Merciful Fate back in their day. I
Oh
didn't.
yeah,
When we were around that time, we just never crossed paths. Right? They may have played New York, and I didn't go see them. I'm
yeah.
sure they played at L'Amour's and stuff like that. I got to see Metallica on their Ride the Lightning tour. They played in Hartford at the Agora, and on the small stage, by the way, not the big one.
Wow.
And I got to meet Cliff that night. After they were done, they were knocking down and stuff. The stuff. I went backstage. Nobody stopped me. And if you've ever been back there, they just have these little rooms with like curtains you can sit
Yeah.
in and change. And I remember one of them was open. He was in there and he was eating cold pizza out of a box and stuff. So I went in there. I said, "Hey, Cliff, I just wanted to say hi." I said, big fan of yours. And I remember telling the connection. You got to throw the connection. Brian Slagle, Brian Slagle, got them going. I said, we're on Metal Blade, Phase 40. He goes, oh yeah, Phase 40. I know you guys, because he knows a lot of underground music, and said, I wanted to say, man, I love what you guys are doing, something to that effect. I got a chance to see him and shake his hand and whatever. That was a nice moment because he died on the next tour, right? It was
Yeah.
Master of Puppets came out. I
They
got
were
to see
supposed to
that
play the
tour.
Agora. I was supposed to see him at the Agora, and then found out that the bus crashed
Yeah,
and he fell out. So yeah, just
yeah.
I remember that. I
I
did
think
see
I
Cliff
think
Burton
I
once.
saw them play. I think I saw them play in a club once for that tour. Don't remember where though. And I saw them. They warmed up for Ozzy. I think on the Ultimate Sin tour. It might have been.
It was, and
Trying to think.
that's where I saw them.
Yeah, that was a great tour too. They were phenomenal even then on that. But seeing them in a club was the best.
I
And Ride the Lightning is still my favorite album. And that to me, Ride the Light. See, I look at Metallica. Great analogy. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets is Night on Brocken, Spectre,
Yeah.
Awaken the Guardian. Master of Puppets is just a beautifully recorded album. Probably some of their best writing, maturing. It's yeah, I go for Ride the Lightning. It was that one that was a major upgrade from Kill 'Em All.
Yep.
It definitely was the beginning of what I think Metallica became. And that's how I feel Spectre was. Spectre was the album where we grew up a lot from 1 to 2.
Yep.
It wasn't a repeat of the first album. And Metallica definitely Ride the Lightning was that album for them. I think that's their heavier album in my mind. I just love it. I don't know why. I can listen to that album. I put that one on every once in a while, more than I do Master of Puppets. Pro- Probably.
That is funny you said that because I just had this conversation maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I said I love the first two Metallica albums. I love Master of Puppets, but for me, when they hit the Black album, that's when I stopped listening to them. I just got bored with
Yeah.
it. But I love Ride the Lightning, and you're right because it might be a little bit more raw, but I still love Seek and Destroy, Jump in the Fire. They had so many great songs on that first album, and that is Night and Bracken. That's funny that you
Yeah.
said that because
And it's true. That's just the way a lot of bands are. Everybody grew up on their second record if they were going to make it. If
yeah,
their second album sucked, they didn't go nowhere. So
yep,
it's always that second. The first one got some notice, and the second one was like, "Holy cow, this band grew up!" And that's how bands made it. Because the magazines like Kerrang and stuff, if they wrote about Kill 'Em All and you pick that up, now they're talking about the new album coming out, and everybody's waiting to hear it. When you heard it, you couldn't help but like say, "Oh my God, this is like 10 times better." Even you're now you're huge, and the metal scene was so big then. It just made that band grow.
oh yeah,
They bought all the records, and that got them to where Masters was, and that's what you did back then as a band. Now, what's making your record become huge and show? I don't. You better notice it yourself because I don't know a lot of people are noticing it out there. And I'm not, it's just the way it is. I'm just being honest. That's the scene out there. Any band will tell you. They make their own CDs. You make 100 CDs. They probably still got like 50 of them sitting in their house,
hmm
you know, and that's just the way it is these days, and so you accept that.
yeah. No, it's sad. I'm so glad that I'm 55, you're 60, that we got at least a chance to grow up in an era when music was great. There were so many great bands. There were so many
Uh,
great venues to go see these bands play. And I even have people say, "Man, I wish I was your age. I would love to do this."
Everybody says that.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Everybody says that to somebody else. I say to people, I wish I was born 3 years earlier.
I
I
know.
could have saw Grand Funk and Deep Purple and all these great bands. I'm like, man, that sucks. I missed all that. I'm like, but honestly, I'm not that stupid either. I I look at the era where I did grow up, even before metal. I grew up. I was listening to music at a young age, so I still was able to get into all those like Queen and Aerosmith and all the bands when they were just coming out. Even those bands, I was following them, and there's something to be said about being there when a great band is going through their paces of all their great albums, and you're part of that versus someone who got into it 20 years ago. And I'm not saying what's the difference. It's if you're into the band, it's still the same great band, but there's something special, right, about being part of that seeing them, but you're that kid that they're playing for, and you're buying the records and you're buying the magazines and you're watching them grow, and it's just something magical about it. It's happening in real time.
Yes.
Where everything else now it's like the old days. Your nostalgia. It's what it is. And even people like Maiden, again, they're still doing it, putting out new records. People just want to hear the old stuff, and
Yeah.
it's the way it is, man. It's the world. That's okay. As long as it's out there,
Yep.
you know,
It's
I've had
fun.
to adapt and I'm all right.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm glad it's out there still. And it's funny because a lot of the metal bands that were really popular in the 80s maybe not be popular now in America, but they go overseas and people still love them.
Yeah, yeah. Some bands are much bigger there than they are here, which is weird. But that's to the point of Europe still has, I'm not saying it's huge anymore, but they definitely have a better scene for all music, especially metal. They have tons of festivals over there. America, I could give you a handful of Doom festivals that are good, maybe, but they're all you can't find them. They're just all over the place. Some are huge. Some are like 10,000 people big. All right,
Hmm
and I see some of the bands playing there. I'm like, I even know half of these bands. Yeah, there's 10,000 people there going nuts.
Yeah.
So that's where when I was promoting the Arduini Balak album, we were promoting more towards Europe than we were in America because we felt that was more the people that would listen to that kind of music. Mythosphere is the same way. I feel like if this album we got some great press and great legs on the first record, better than I thought. If this record does even better, I kind of would hope we could get something overseas. I've never done a show overseas.
Uh,
Kind of one of those things I thought Arduini Balak was going to do. Just never happened because the band fell apart. But the fact is, I still believe Mythosphere is a band that has. I mean, he's been there. I think he's been there to do a festival or two in Beelzebub, so they know what it's about. So we'll see what happens. That's kind of on my bucket list. And again, it might be in Connecticut, we have a place called Cherry Street.
Yes,
It's a very
Wallingford.
small, divey place, but it's great for metal, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a divey little place. You might get 20 people watching you. You might get 100 if you have a big festival or something. If I went to Europe and played at Cherry Street, I'd be all happy. I'd be like, hey, at least I'm playing in here. And there's some people here. It means something to me because it's Europe. But I'm not going to lose sleep if I never get there. But
Yeah.
it is on my bucket list.
I know Opus with his Black Sabbath tribute band plays over in Europe, but he's the official Black Sabbath tribute band in that area, and I see
Yeah.
pictures of him all the time playing. He loves. He said such a as you we were talking about such a great scene. Now he's playing with the Cro-Mags. Harley Flanagan. He's
You
playing
know
drums.
that.
Yeah, he's not.
Oh
He's.
wow.
I think he's that's not going to be his full time. He's still going to be doing Dead by Wednesday, but that's I guess whatever happened with the drummer, the Harley asked him to fill in, so he's all over the place now.
God bless them. Cro-Mags, I'm sure, will be playing even bigger, probably the biggest places, and of all his bands right now. So you got to go with that. If you're in a band that's doing well, it's like my eldest. Can't say no to that. And I like it, number one, but I like having people there, and
Yeah.
making money is always a part of it to some people. And so Cro-Mags, that's a cool gig. I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't
he's
hear
he's
about
he's
that.
doing well. I mean, I've known him since he was 15 years old, and I've never known him to do anything but music. And he just always persevered, never gave up. And I'm so happy that he finally broke through, and he's maybe not rich, but he's making a living out of it.
He's making a living out of it, and that's these days that's more than a lot of people are doing. I mean, even big musicians, people they'll tell you, I work a side job when I'm not touring and stuff like that. People that you would think wouldn't be working, you know, they
Yep.
still work a side job. I mean, just you got to do it. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
what are you going to do? You can make some money with the band, but are you going to make the kind of money that can get a house for your family, put your kids to college and all that? You better have a career. I mean, the smartest thing I ever did was get out of Faith and become a nurse and have a career. I mean, it was in hindsight, of course, it's the greatest thing I did, but I did it more so just because being in a metal band just wasn't going to work for me with the thoughts of where Fates were going and what they wanted. I just couldn't commit that much to. And that sounds crazy, but when someone wants you to go on tour with no promises of any money, and we don't know how long it's going to be, and what about a job? I got, oh, that's up to you. You got to figure that out. Basically, how it was told.
Oh yeah. Plus, your wife was pregnant at the time. You just
Yeah,
lost your job. You just got a new job. So I
yeah.
completely understand where you're coming from. As much
John
as
Arch had the same problem. It
yeah,
was almost identical. It was funny when I learned the story about John and how he left and the why and all how it was almost identical. And he got pissed too. He was pissed at Jim for years for it
yeah,
because it was just not right. But at the end of the day, you look at where your life is now, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I
yeah.
like all the memories I've made because I wasn't in Fates, all the music I got to make because I wasn't in Fates, and the family and the stuff I got to do with my family and the things I got to do in my private life were because I wasn't in Fates Warning. And it was great. And honestly, when I sit from the outside and I look at Fates, I don't know. I guess you get stuck in any band you're in, and when you're in it, you keep growing with it. So I don't. I'm not saying I wouldn't have been into it, but I kind of look at where they went. And I'm like, I'm glad I didn't stick it out that long, and kind of did something different with my life. I got a lot more to talk about, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, no, you made the right decision. I'm very happy for you. The one thing I want to talk about is if I'm not sure how much you know with why Steve Zimmerman left. According to the book, they didn't think that he could play what they wanted him to play. And I said we talked about what a great drummer he is, and I've heard him play. I've seen him live. The guy,
Yeah.
and he was so into it. I was just surprised. Maybe there's more to it than what I read in the book.
I honestly don't know the real reasons because I wasn't there.
Yeah,
I will say Steve was a phenomenal drummer, and you know, the only thing I ever had have an issue with is a band as good as Fate. All right, so you got rid of me. I'm another guitar player, I mean, Then you get rid of a singer like John Arch. Like
Yeah.
hey, we'll just get another singer. And then a drummer like Steve, who's so big part of their sound and powerful. And it's such a presence in the Fates Warning sound, I always felt, with Steve's drum style. And you get rid of that. And it kind of was like, that's when it started changing for me. That's to me, when Steve left, it wasn't what I felt was Fates. Fates up to No Exit, I could buy into it because it had all the original members other that, and Frank made his point on Guardian, so it was a different version of mine, fine, but it was still within the realms of Fates, although it did have another singer. The next album, when they got Zonder in, it just became a totally different type of band because
Yeah.
Jim was growing as a writer and he wanted somebody because of that. You got to expect Jim's into music that probably Fates wasn't even listening to. All right. Jim got into a lot of eclectic stuff. And, he liked Zonder's style and he probably had ideas for his, which obviously was perfect. No, perfect symmetry, right?
Yes. Yeah.
First, and you listen to the way Mark played and Jim's writing, it tells you right there it's a different band. There's nothing on Perfect Symmetry that reminds you of Awaken the Guardian or Spectre Within and even No Exit. All right. It's like a totally brand new band. So that was to me the moment that Fates really became, and they became another great band, just like Sabbath with Ozzy became a great band with Sabbath with Dio. Okay.
Yeah.
But they really wrote differently and sounded a little different. The vocals were a part of it, but many other elements too. And I felt that that was a moment where Fates just became the version two, if you will. It became the band that's even there today. That was the beginning of that band. And I feel the Arch days, and even I would throw No Exit more towards the Arch days as far as style and sound is No Exit. I think those four albums were pretty much phase one of Fates, and phase two to where it is now was started with Perfect Symmetry, and that's a great. In many ways, it blows the water out of the musicianship and stuff we did in the early days. I mean, you can't help but hear the technical side of it and the production side of it grew up a lot.
Yeah.
And it was a totally they put themselves on another plane as far as professionalism and and which is great. And I love all that. It still doesn't take away from what our band was about, our version of Fates. It's like saying, oh yeah, I used to like Slayer, but now I like Pink Floyd. It's like,
Yeah.
well, Slayer's still a great band. It's just you've grown into another style of music. It doesn't mean that was bad. So I feel like I was just part of a different version of Fates Warning, which was those first four records. Some people stop it after Arch, but I always have put No Exit in more into the vein of the next album maybe Arch would have been a part of,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
could
just me.
definitely picture that because it's
Yeah,
more straightforward metal, and it was probably their heaviest album to
yeah,
date. Then that's when,
yeah,
after that, that's when Jim, even according to the book, said, "I got to do something different," and then they went in a
yeah.
completely different direction.
So he did, and so God bless him because he can sit back and say he's had a hell of a career,
Yeah,
and he was able to take a band and get rid of prominent musicians, but one by one, and always replace them with a better musician and somebody who brought something new to the table. And he that was how he liked to be. He wanted things to change, so it worked in a way. Maybe it was a necessary evil, and the product he put out always stood up, right? So
yeah,
every time he put out something, you noticed it was different. It was still great quality, new ideas, some with mixed with some old sounds. So he figured it out. And if I were him, and I was at the end of my rope with Fates like he was, and said, "I'm just don't want to do it," he can look back and say, "Hey, I created a great band. He was a part of it.
oh
You
yeah,
know, we create. I have to say, I always want people to know we created Fates. There was never one person that created it. I don't care how much people listen to what John does or Jim does or I do, anybody. It was really five guys, five young kids who just got in a room who started writing originals and just kept that process going. And definitely Jim's songs were definitely getting stronger. I only had two albums to work with him, but it was really a band effort in the beginning, you know, really in that way, even though Jim ran things, it was still a band thing, I feel. It wasn't until I think when they got rid of John that it really became more of Jim's Fates Warning. Maybe it's a fair way to put it. And it became that more so as that went forward. Definitely from by Perfect Symmetry, definitely. And I love it. I have all their records. I still have them all. I got them all on vinyl. And you know, I respect them, you know, and I'm really proud. When I was a kid, you know what I always wanted? One thing. I knew I would make it. And I feel like my music career was strong. If I could go into a record store and see my record or CD, whatever it was at the time. And you know, he used to have all the labels with the bands. To
Yeah.
not see somebody put it under the F category, but there's actually one that's typed out Fates Warning. And I saw that at Strawberries and a couple other places. And I said, how many bands can go to a record store and you're big enough to have your name printed and have its own little thing? That's just, and now with today's bands, it's never going to happen. It's just, it's all the old bands that are still in Strawberries. It ain't the new music really. But that to me was like, I was a part of that. So I can die and say, hey, I got something in my history that shows, you know, we went and did something and I was a piece of it. That's all, just a little piece of it. And it was the greatest time of my life because I was only, what, 83? I was 20 years old when I joined the band. I was young, you know, 21. We started writing probably by late 83, maybe early 84. We wrote pretty quick that first record. So I was 20, 21 years old when we wrote Brocken. All of us were. So
That's,
keep that.
did you ever reunite with them? Because I know the Awaken the Guardian, they went on tour, but I think I saw pictures with you got together with them at least.
We got together a few times years ago. It hasn't been a long time. I got together once when we signed a contract to re-release the early albums when they had the bonus tracks. We met once at Joe, I think it was John's house we met. And another time, a couple times, we had like a picnic and we all got together. One time it was at my house. I think it was at my house. I can't remember now, to tell you the truth, where it was. But we got together twice for some picnics, and I remember hanging out with the guys. But just haven't seen him in many. I see Joe all the time because his son, you know, his son's a phenomenal drummer.
Oh, I didn't know
Phenomenal.
about that. What band
Oh
is
my
he in?
God. Oh, but he's in every band. All right.
Really? I got
He
to.
goes on tour. People hire him. He tours with all kinds of big bands, and
Wow.
stuff. He is amazing. He's an amazing drummer. Can't say enough. And it's because of him I started recording at the studio I'm still with, because I met him, I bumped into him on Block Island one summer. We were at vacation, and I'm riding my bike, and he's like, "Vic!" He yells out the car. So he with his family. So I went and met him at his house where they were staying. We chatted all afternoon, and he goes, "Oh, you got to hear my kids' band, right?" So he plays his 5-song demo, whatever they did in the studio, and I was just starting to get ready for the Freedom's Reign record. So we haven't even recorded yet. And I heard the sound and the drums, the power of the drum. I go, hold on, your fucking kid's awesome, man. I go, he's amazing. He's tight. He's double bass. I mean, he can play with it. And the sound of the recording, I said, where did you get it done? And he told me. And I recorded Freedom Reign there and everything I've done since.
Wow.
And I picked up a great relationship with the owner of the club of the studio now. But it's because of his son and hearing that got me in there. And his son now, like I said, he plays with so many different. He's like that guy who's just always on tour. I think he makes his living now just playing with bands, and you
Wow.
know he's that good. All right, so it's kind of cool that Joe being Joe, and then you got a son who equally has made his own footing. Maybe more so as I don't know if he's in a band that has made it with their own originals. He just plays with people and jumps in, and he knows some good people. He's played the 10,000 seat
Wow.
stadium tours. Oh yeah, big stuff. So good for him.
Well, I know
You know,
Steve's in a band now. What about Joe? Is he still playing bass?
Joe is like he doesn't want to be in a full time band. He gave that up years ago. But
Okay.
he did a recording on an album came out last year, and I can't remember the name of the band. I'm sorry, Joe. But they put it was the guitar player who I think who did he play for now? I think they got either played for Megadeth or some big band, and Joe was the bassist on the recording, and they did a really good album, and didn't they do any touring for it? Didn't think they were gonna, and nothing's happened, and I don't know what if he's staying with them, doing another one, or it was a one off. Outside of that, Joe has shown up and done some shows. He loved the Good Rats, and he was actually a member of the Good Rats for a few years. And because he loved them so much, he became a full time player and did local shows, New Jersey, New York. That's where the Good Rats were popular for.
Yeah.
So he's done little things like that. But no, he's not into becoming a full time member for anybody right now. He just doesn't want that lifestyle. I don't blame him.
No, neither do I. Was the guitar player Chris Poland? Because I know Chris Poland's been playing a lot lately.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, he reemerged. I haven't seen him in the longest time. Then he's actually doing a lot of shows with Opus, because Opus used to play with Dave Ellefson, with David Ellison's band. And then I know Chris Poland came out, and that's why I was wondering if Joe was part of that.
I just don't remember the names. I'm bad with names. It goes to show. I don't. They tell me, oh, this guy was in this band. Like I'm supposed to know. I'm like, I don't even know who he is. But if you say he's in the band, that's cool. It gives them. That's like so somebody says, oh, Victor Arduini, he was in Fates Warning, and they don't know who I am, but they know Fates Warning.
Yep.
Whatever.
Well,
so anyway, but yeah, Steve he's basically been playing with a lot of the same musicians for many years. Band called Enemy Remains, which used to have another name years ago, Image Beyond, and then they same pretty much musicians became Enemy Remains, and they were a pretty cool band. They wrote some really cool stuff. Matter of fact, the members of the band, Tommy Blardo, Mike Smolak, when we were playing in the early days when I was still in the band, and they were like a few years younger than us. They were like the kids who who knew Fates Warning, and they were our roadies, and they would come to shows just so they could do something. Yeah, and Steve's brother played drums with them too. So they kind of started playing with Steve years later and wrote some pretty cool stuff. I think they're in the process of remixing, we're remixing our old tapes and stuff. I've done that recently with Siniscali, and they're going to put out a release of the old what's not Image Being? I get them all mixed up. Enemy Remains. They're going to probably put out like some type of re-release of remixed, and it's cool. But I don't know if they're writing anymore. They haven't played out live. The last time they played out live was when I was in Freedom's Reign. We did a couple shows together.
Oh, really?
So, and Steve kind of went underground for a while. I don't think they were doing much of anything. And then I heard they were kind of back together. Steve's a peculiar guy. He's a little hermit. You don't hear of him much, but when he comes out, he does great things, but he's a different dude, man. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. He used to talk his own language all the time in practice. He had all these weird things and sayings, and we all just started following it after a while. We started imitating him and stuff, but he was always 1-2 steps ahead of us.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, just seeing, they mentioned his sense of humor in the book, and I could see in the pictures that he has a great personality. Jim, on the other hand, seems so serious all the time. I've met him a couple times at the Agora, and just like, I never saw him once smile. It's just like...
No, he's always too serious, and that's fine. That's just who he is.
That's him, yeah.
But, he'd be the guy in the room if you're doing an interview, and if you said something, he'd have to correct you or something, and you shouldn't have said that. You didn't say it right. You always felt like you didn't know what you could say, and that was just Jim. That was just Jim's demeanor, and none of us gave a shit. But that was just the way he would be. He had a way where he knew the right things to say, so we were pretty much we didn't know what to do, and we didn't care. I would speak. Matter of fact, I got one in our first interview. I said something, and he corrects me after it, and I'm like, okay, but that's just the way it is, but look at him, he's done well, so he can't complain.
Yeah,
I guess he did know what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of radio, I know Tommy from Metal Fortress Radio, because I used to, when I was doing comedy, I was on there. I guess, I don't know if he owns it or just works for it. Tommy and his wife, they have Metal Fortress Radio.
They own the station, yeah.
Yeah, so I did a couple interviews as they were interviewing me on the show, and that's where I became friends with him, and they did a couple promos for my comedy and things like that. But last time I saw him, he he Metal Fortress Radio sponsored the Sacred Oath show at Crystal Beach, so he went on stage and introduced the band. So I haven't seen him. But that's how I found out he was working with Steve Zimmerman. I had
Yeah.
no idea about that because we were
Oh, he's
talking
been with
about
him forever. He's
it.
like
Yeah,
he's basically Steve's right hand man. They've been friends and cohorts in music forever and ever and ever. You know, everybody has that one guy.
yeah,
Tommy Blardo is definitely with Steve. They've been together like that forever. You know, so he's a good dude. He's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
dude.
definitely. Is that station still active?
I don't know because I never really, like I said, I don't listen to metal much. So if it's, I'm sure it may be available because I think I still see things about it, but I just don't follow any of that, so I couldn't tell you if it's on or off.
And I'm the same way. I want to talk about Kyrie Liaison because how did that movie how did that song get featured in River's Edge?
Uh, don't know the exact reason, but it had something to do with after the record was out. Um, we were our publishing was through Bug Music, and Bug Music was doing the soundtrack. I think they had something to do with their artists who were going to do the soundtrack. So obviously they must have somehow wanted to find some music and don't know how they found us, but someone in Bug or somebody maybe knew somebody and Kyrie became a song. We got word that, hey, they want to use this song in the movie. That's all we know. And we know it had something to do with Bug Music because they were doing if you look on the soundtrack, it says something about Bug Music. So it's somewhere in that vein, the connection with the publishing who was doing the movie. We're looking for songs, and we probably just came out with a song, and maybe Brian from Metal Blade put a plug in for us. I don't know what happened, but we got on it, and I never forget when they had the premiere. Um, I lived in Plainville. We had a really nice movie theater then, one of the more state of the art at the time. Not
Yeah.
even there anymore. And I remember telling the guys it's going to be playing there on this, certain night debuting. So we all went as a band to go see it, and watch the movie, which was so cool. And and let me tell you something, for nothing, but when our song comes on, it's the best part of the movie.
Hmm.
It's the reveal of the dead body. It's like it's such a cool moment when that part down, 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 down. It's like heavy and it's
Yeah,
like wow.
I
And I'm
love it.
not sure if that was Keanu Reeves' first movie, but it's the first one I know of him ever being in.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper was in it.
Oh yeah.
What a great actor, Dennis Hopper. There's a couple. Oh, the guy who was in Back to the Future.
Crispin Glover.
What, yeah, he's in it. I mean, great actors in their first movie.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have known?
Yep.
And I love that movie. I think it's a great dark little movie for its time.
I love it too. And you know what's funny? Daniel Roebuck, which people probably don't know his name, but he played in at least 400 movies. He's in everything. He's one of the biggest character actors. I call him the Dick Miller of movies because he's just like Dick Miller, where he's in everything, and people are like, who is that guy? I know him. But I interviewed him, but also I didn't interview him because I didn't have a show at the time. But Crispin Glover, I met at Real Artways in Hartford. He was promoting one of his movies. He is one of the most nicest, quietest guys I met.
Yeah,
Wow, he was just like, I love your movie. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
yeah,
What happened was he was doing kids with Down syndrome were doing Shakespeare, and he was afraid that people were going to watch it, and he thought he didn't want people thinking that he was making fun of them. He wanted to just give them a chance that nobody else would, and so he
yeah.
was promoting and touring with the movie to let people know this is just a dream project of mine. I'm trying to help these kids out. I'm not making
Wow,
fun of them. It was really nice, and he was such a
cool.
good guy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. He was a good actor. I liked a lot of stuff I've seen him in. He was cool.
Oh yeah, he's what I like about him because he can always play the crazy guy, but then he can play in the comedies like Back to the Future. He's very versatile.
I thought he was great in Back to the Future.
Oh
He
yeah.
was he was just so good in that one. Oh my god, I think they want to watch that movie again. You
What's
know,
funny because when I was reading the book, I forgot that song was featured. I said I got to see River's Edge again. It made me think about that movie. I was like, I got to watch that again. And as soon as you said that, it's like, oh yeah, it was the scene because it's been a couple
yep.
of years since I've seen it. Yeah.
I see the movie. It's on, like either Netflix or Amazon Prime. You can find it somewhere to watch. Now it's readily available. There were years you couldn't find it. It was unless you had a VHS of it, you couldn't find it. But now it's
Yeah.
become a cult classic. So
Yeah.
another thing to be proud of. They have a song in a cool movie like that. That was pretty cool.
Yep. Well, there's something else you should be proud of too, because this is for Entierro. Your album "Gates of Hell" was named as one of the top 10 Connecticut albums of 2023. That's something to be proud of.
I saw that. I saw that. And you know what? I love that record. We've grown as a band. That band started off, before I was in them, they were together already for a few years as a doom stoner sludge band. That's what pretty much their first two EPs were. Very heavy, sludgy. But there was a couple songs on there that had a little more of a hook, and somebody turned me on. Actually, the producer guy I talked about turned me on to one song, and I loved them. I'm like, oh, this band is great, Well, I'm writing my album, maybe a year later, and he's like, called me up one day. He goes, hey, they're looking for another guitar player. The other guitarist is moving to Texas. And I said, oh, wow, sounds cool. So you could want to audition? And I'm like, yeah. So he gave me Chris, the bassist singer's number, and he called me. We had a long talk right in this room here about it. And I was just all pumped. I told him how much I love their music. And I said, I'm really into that stoner doom vibe right now. That's what I was really into at the time. And went down, we had one rehearsal, and it just clicked. And
Hmm.
so we started writing our own music, and we put out 3 releases together. First one was a full length album, and the last two have been like 5, 6 song EPs, whatever. And from the first to the third, we've grown a lot, and I've been able to incorporate more of what I'm about. Where in the beginning, I kind of just you write the songs, and I'll just play a solo and play whatever you're playing. Now I'm creating my own stuff and writing my own songs, and the new album really was our best work. A lot of heavy guitar soloing, harmonizing. I mean, we really took it to another level as far as guitar work, and the singer really nailed it. And that's a good thing to see something like that because you don't even know somebody's noticing,
Yep.
and they put us on that category. I did see that, and I was like, wow, this is something cool. We got some great reviews for that record as well, and we're actually right now we're in the situation where because of the scene in Connecticut,
Yeah.
what do we do next? We want to write more music, but I'm like, are we writing music for us? Because not like we sold a million copies. We didn't sell much at all, if you want to think about it. We only had a couple shows for the album. Um, so what's the point? You do all that work, the writing and the recording and the money and this and that, and you put it out and you do what we've done, I think, 2 shows for the record since it came out because there's just nowhere to play. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And it's like, so now we're just been rehearsing. We've been rehearsing like about 10 songs already just to do the on-off show. We don't have anything lined up now, but one show band asks you want to play on this 4 band gig, and I'm like, all right, we'll go up there and play for 30 minutes and do our thing. But it's fun. But it's kind of hard to think about doing more when you're saying, and I don't want to write just the same album again. Kind of got to be something. So I told the band, I go, why don't we just not worry about writing right now, but be more so about learning our old songs, learning some we haven't done in a while, just have fun playing. We love being together. These guys are great guys. I love my Tuesday nights as going to see them just because I'm with musicians who I become good friends with. And I think it's half the camaraderie of hanging with them and talking metal and music or whatever, and not just the music all the time. That's got to be part of it too.
Yeah.
But that album was a good one, and I think if we do come up with another, I'm hoping we can do something even a little better than that one. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. No, I listened to it and I loved it. So I'm
You did
definitely
it.
looking forward to. Yeah, I loved it.
Good.
And that was the band I did see with Curse the Sun over at the Cellar on Treadwell, and I loved you guys
Oh,
when I.
you were at that show. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
good show.
that was,
That
yeah.
that was a good one. I remember that one. That one was maybe I think before the album came out. I'm not sure if Gates was out yet. We might have done a song from it, but I remember that show just feeling like there was a lot of power on stage. We played well that night, and I felt like it was a good show for us. So
Yeah.
thanks for that. I'm glad you saw it.
Oh yeah, you're very welcome. That's why I'm glad that we're having this conversation because I definitely want to keep in touch or at least see what's going on through your Facebook of where you're going to be playing because you have so many great projects out there. I mean, Bobby Sings the King, Entierro, the other Mythosphere. So I'm wherever your bands are gonna be, I'm going to gladly support you and let people
If
know.
I can get you the tickets for Bobby, I hope I can. You'll be at that show.
Yep.
And then I'll tell you this much first. By the time we want to catch up again, the Mythosphere album is, as we're saying, we're recording it. I'm not sure when it's going to be out, but it's going to be out sometime this year, maybe in the summer, early fall, and we definitely catch up again, and we can talk a little about the album, and then we can spend the rest of the night talking music.
Sounds
I
like
mean, let's just get the album out of the way, ask the questions you got to ask, and all that good stuff, and then we can talk about the stuff we want to talk about. So
you know what? That sounds like a great plan. So thank you very much for being on the show. I had the best time going down memory lane, talking about all these great bands I have not talked about in a long time. And thank you for introducing me to some new bands that I'm going to be checking out very soon too. Like Witch Hazel is one of them. So
I'm going to send you some stuff. You be ready for that, okay?
oh, I'm ready.
And when you get this together, I can't wait to see it. See what we. If I got to sit here for 4 hours, what time is it? It's 11 o'clock. 4 hours. If I have to, I hope I have to watch a 4 hour interview. Holy cow!
I might make this into 2 parts.
Yeah. I'll cut it down to 3 hours and 45 minutes. How's that?
All right. I can work with that. I like that.
Brother, thank you so much. I really mean it, Rich. I sincerely mean it. That talking to you was a lot of fun. It was good for me to just have someone to talk to and talk music tonight. And I cannot tell you when I've ever talked 4 hours. The only time I've ever talked 4 hours is probably when I was dating my wife and we would be on the phone all night. I don't think there's been, and that was 25 years ago. So I don't think there's anybody I've done this with 100% since then. So it had to be a good interview. It had to be good subject matter. It was good stuff. So thanks again, and let's catch up again, okay?
Oh, we most definitely will.
Again, if I see you at Elvis could be April. So if I can get you, no, April, I'll see you at Beyond Purple.
Yes,
if you get a ticket. In May at the show anyway. If you can get you, I'll know that by tomorrow if I can get you a ticket. Okay.
All right. So yeah, so we got Beyond Purple, got Bobby Sings the King, and then also whatever else comes. So let me know. But I'll definitely.
Entierro's working on trying to find a show. We don't have one, but since we're looking, I guarantee we'll find something by the spring. We'll be looking to do something by April. So when that comes up, I'll run that date by you too. Okay.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Mythosphere. Once we get the new album done, we're going to do some shows. I told them I'm going to bring them up this way because we're from Maryland, and we'll probably do a Connecticut, Massachusetts, do like a weekend here. So you might get to see all of us in 1 year.
You know what? I love it. So before we go, I know we talked about the different bands. Is there anything, and we talked about some of the things coming up. Is there anything else that you want to promote or let people know where they can find you before we go?
If anybody gets to the end of the 4 hour interview, I just want to thank everybody for listening. And I do get very talkative, so I can't wait to see how I overtalked in this interview. But all I care about is you and I enjoyed it. And if somebody in the audience enjoyed it, great. And if anybody is listening because they remember what I've done or kind of have followed what I've been doing, or maybe are going to go listen to some of it, thank you. That's all I want to say. It means a lot to me because, you know what? I do this for myself, as I said, but it really means a lot when even that one person digs the style or something I've done or been a part of. So it's cool. Yep. And it includes you.
Yep. No, and I really do appreciate that. And for me, a lot of friends that watch this show are our age. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people. Oh my God, I remember this. Oh my God, I was at that show. So there's gonna be a lot more people that are gonna make it through the 4 hours than you think. So, but I'm glad that it's a Claw's Corner first. We got a 4 hour conversation.
It's a record. Have you done 4 hours before? I want to know.
I did one other one. He was not HR, but the Bad Brains had a second singer. He went almost 5 hours. I know. Finally, I had to cut him off. I said, you know what? My back is
tired. I'm tired.
I was still alive and I had rigor mortis. I'm like,
yeah. Well, I gotta get up and stretch here. 4 hours in this chair. I can't believe I sat here 4 hours. I haven't had to go to the bathroom either. Even better.
That's very impressive, especially at our age.
Yes. I had a moment where I got through it, so good.
Well, Victor,
all right, brother. Listen, take care of yourself and keep in touch. We can still message each other, but I'm going to send you some stuff and let's keep in touch, okay?
Oh, we most definitely will. Thank you very much for being on the show. It was great. I had the best 4 hours I've had in a long time.
Me too. I'm saying that very honestly. I'm not making that up. All right, take care, brother.
Have a great night. That wraps up the latest episode of the Claw's Corner. A huge thanks goes out to guitarist and vocalist Victor Arduini for taking time out of his extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. I also need to thank editor extraordinaire John Bristol of the award-winning Elmwood Productions for always doing a superb job editing this show each and every week and making it available to all on YouTube. I am also extremely grateful to Joseph Timothy Quirk and Rob Bull for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations as well as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Suckers! All of a sudden I hear brim, brim.
What's a diaphragm again?
Ha! We caught one.
They're supposed to be weird.
Oh, yeah, no. If you say so.
I've always wanted to be in a movie.
Waiting around for autumn, I was watching.